Chapter 371. In the Skynet virtual world, Caesar had not only created a casual zone for entertainment and fantasy, but he had also asked the Lord God to create two special play zones with AI characters, PK, and missions. The first space was set during the early stages of the Second World War, and players could choose to join any country or faction at random. Players could control their own characters to join the army, go through rigorous recruit training and assessment, and follow the highly realistic intelligent AI troops, and use the retro-strategic weapons of the time to throw themselves into the rain of bullets on the two world battlefields of Europe and the Pacific. The war in the virtual world might have a completely different future due to the participation of players. Here, Caesar had set up a special game Easter egg. Players could join the Hydra organization, but once they joined, they would not be able to leave. The system would also give out bounties and hunting missions to all players of the other factions. Players of the Hydra faction would be hunted down or assassinated to death, and they would drop a game item called Red Skull Underwear. This was also why Caesar had repeatedly whipped the corpses of the Hydra organization. Players could also play the role of a fleeing merchant, doctor, or civilian. They could personally experience the disaster and grief brought about by the World War half a century ago. They could even sneak into countries unaffected by the flames of war and explore the world's scenery with close to 100% freedom. Players only had one life in these special spaces. Once their health bar reached zero, they would drop all their items and money. Their attributes and skills would be reset, and their military rank and title in the special zone would be taken back. Their original body would be revived on Skynet's initial light beam platform. It could be said that this game space satisfied all the pursuits of gun enthusiasts. It was also Caesar's remembrance and reminiscence of World War II. After all, that was the starting point of him starting from nothing, from a recruit to a legendary hero. The second play zone was Gotham City. The setting of the zone was the same as the year 2009 in the real world. Even the basic model of the map was modified according to the real New York City. Compared to the combat zone of the First World War zone, Gotham City was more of a gray-neutral zone. Those who broke the law would become criminals, and they would be wanted by the police and special people. Other than the doppelganger Caesar and the real Kale, no one else could understand the setting and creation of this play zone. However, the charm of this special play zone still attracted many players. Skynet Virtual Platform, Gotham City. The night sky without the moon and stars was overcast with dark clouds. Strange Gothic modern buildings stood tall, and the streets were lit with dim neon lights that were rich in mood. However, most of the lights did not cover the dark alleys that were filled with filth. From time to time, cats and dogs would pass by, revealing their green pupils. On the bustling commercial streets, intelligent AIs that looked like ordinary gentlemen and ladies walked around. Some were busy with business, some were home after work, and some were shopping. It was as if they had been living in this city since they were born, carrying out their lives in an orderly manner. Among them, there were quite a number of strange-looking pedestrians. These were all players. They wandered around in groups of twos and threes, whispering to each other as they explored the inner-city scenery. At this moment, located at the crossroads of the commercial street, on the dome of a cathedral nearly 50 meters high, no one noticed that a handsome blonde youth was sitting on the edge of the eaves with his feet sticking out. He welcomed the night breeze and looked down at the city below with his big blue eyes. A cat with black fur jumped lightly onto his shoulder. Its tail wagged left and right, and the cat had a very happy expression on its face. Caesar glanced at the cat and said with annoyance, "I say, Eddie, why did you make your game character look like this?" The black cat raised its small face and said in human language, "Normally in the real world, don't you always sit on my shoulder? Now that we are in a virtual space, at least let me sit on your shoulder." "Up to you." Caesar really could not understand Eddie's weird idea. The black cat looked down at the street. "Young master, I don't quite understand your intention in creating this Gotham City area. Your setting for this area is very strange. There is no day here and it is always this eerie night." Caesar chuckled. "Eddie, what do you know? Only the night has the charm that the day doesn't have, and it can easily induce the darkness and fear in people's hearts." "The style of the Dark series?" The black cat's mouth twitched like a human. It said thoughtfully, "You even had the Lord God set this place to have a high crime rate and incompetent police. This is all on purpose, right?" "Now that's more immersive. The original New York was not much better than this." Caesar shrugged and changed the topic. "This is the Sims gaming area. Players can do the jobs they want here and live the life they want. It is the best virtual environment to realize Second Life." The black cat narrowed its eyes and complained, "I feel like it's not that simple. You little devil, you are very bad." Of course it's not that simple. I even created some special AI characters here. Caesar blinked his eyes meaningfully. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful explosion suddenly occurred at the door of a bank below, causing the previously peaceful and bustling street to fall into panic and chaos. What's going on? The black cat's hair stood on end as it looked down. The bank's shop was ablaze, and the intense explosion caused the glass door to shatter into pieces. The AI pedestrians at the entrance panicked and fled the scene. Some of the players who were caught in the middle were also scared out of their wits. Many of the players were surprised and watched from a safe distance. Then 3 vans stopped in front of the bank. A group of 10 masked criminals with guns entered the bank. They were well trained in their roles of looting and looting. Soon they were carrying bags of money into the vans. During this time, 5 patrol cars approached with their sirens blaring. The criminals did not even look at them. They took out rocket launchers from the vans and fired at the police vans. The explosion and fire drowned the street. This is robbery? That's too arrogant. Just like the other players, Black Cat sucked in a breath of cold air as her scalp tingled. She was stunned for a moment. Caesar shrugged. The weapons of the criminals are more powerful than those of the police. That is the law of Gotham City. The Black Cat said angrily, "What kind of setting is this? This is too much. How would the players dare to stay here? How could they lose their equipment to the criminals? Don't be hasty. Let's wait a little longer." Caesar smiled but did not say anything. He estimated the time in his heart. It was about time for the special AI character to appear. On the street below, the armed criminals were unstoppable. After robbing the bank, they prepared to leave the scene. An injured AI police officer lay in a pool of blood. He looked at them unwillingly. With difficulty, he took out something that looked like a flashlight from his pocket and switched it on. The bright light shone into the night sky, and the imprint of a bat with its wings spread appeared in the sky. It was exposed to the eyes of the AI characters and players in the city. Chapter 372. In the virtual world in the central area of Gotham City. The crime scene at the bank was a mess. Flames lit up the streets and smoke rose in spirals. Everything was like a real-life movie. The AI civilians fled in all directions in fear, the criminal gangs committed crimes with their weapons, the police moaned weakly in a pool of blood, and the players watched in bewilderment from a safe distance. Even the neon lights by the roadside dimmed slightly at this moment, the light and shadows blurred. Bat, Mark. On the top floor of the Western-style pendulum church, the Black Cat was lying on Caesar's shoulder. It looked up at the strange light mark in the night sky and mumbled to itself. Everyone in the city also looked up at the mark in the night sky. It was clearly an animal that represented the dark creatures of the night, but for some reason, it had the effect of calming the panic of the civilians and intimidating the criminals. Damn it! That guy is almost here. Hurry up and get the car out of here. Seeing this, the masked criminal leader growled savagely. There was a hint of fear and dread in his eyes. He waved his arm and called for his accomplices to get back into the modified van. At the same time, all the players within 1 kilometer of the area received a side mission notification. Option 1. Trigger the side mission. Stop the terrorists from escaping. As a good citizen of Gotham City, it is your duty to stop all unjust and evil forces, even at the risk of sacrificing your life. Mission requirement. Use your own strength to stop the terrorists from escaping and delay them as much as possible. Mission reward. 1 Citizen of Justice badge, plus 10 Batman's favorability. Option 2. Trigger the side mission, help the terrorists escape. Abandon the principles of justice and morality, cross the bottom line of the law and ethics, and follow the desires in your heart to become a member of the dark side. Mission requirement. Use your own strength to help the terrorists escape and let them get away with it. Mission reward. Gain the approval of evil forces, minus 10 Batman favorability. The Black Cat stared at the system window dumbfounded. It glanced sideways at Caesar. This mission of yours is intentional, isn't it? Where there is justice, there is naturally evil. Gotham City has always been a place where there are 2 distinct extremes. Caesar smiled happily. Looking at the players below, he said in a low voice, "So make your choice. What you don't dare to do in real life will be magnified in this virtual space, luring you down the path of your heart." The players below hesitated. After 3 seconds, no one chose to accept the mission. Seeing this, the Black Cat heaved a sigh of relief. It narrowed its eyes at Caesar and said, "That's good. Human nature is more gray-neutral, which means that it doesn't matter." Caesar smiled and didn't mind at all. He said, "I guessed it." This is because the players have just arrived at Gotham City. After they familiarize themselves with the environment and acquire a certain level of equipment, they will eventually have to make the choice between good and evil. This choice will indirectly affect reality, right? What will you do to the players who have joined the evil forces? Supervise and examine them in real life? The black cat looked at Caesar nervously. Caesar smiled but didn't say anything. In the virtual world, people tended to be more inclined to their own choices. Bang. Since no player stepped forward to stall for time, the criminal gang drove the modified van filled with cash and knocked away the wreckage of the police car that was lying across the road. Then they sped up and disappeared around the corner of the intersection. However, just as the three modified vans reached the corner, a black shadow suddenly flashed across the side lane. The exhaust of the engine behind the van spurted out blue high-temperature exhaust flames, and the giant low four-wheel drive wheels rubbed against the high-speed road, creating sparks. With a beautiful drift, the van stopped in the middle of the road, forcing the criminal gang's vehicles to stop abruptly. What the hell is that? The players at the scene were stunned. The thing that stopped the gang was a strange-looking bat-shaped sports car. However, compared to the usual luxurious, expensive and cool sports cars, the car in front of him was more ferocious, robust, domineering and heavyweight. It was equipped with four-wheel drive wheels of a heavy-duty car, and the body of the car was covered with bulletproof steel plates that were cold and dark. The shape of the car was like a nocturnal bat, and it was extremely eye-catching. It's Batman. Hurry up and break through. The terrorist leader yelled and grabbed the driver's wheel from the front passenger seat. He stepped on the accelerator and drove the modified van toward the Batmobile in front of him. The Batmobile was not to be outdone. Its engine roared as it rammed into the van. Bam! The two vans collided violently. The modified van was big, but when it was hit by the shorter Batmobile, the front of the van was smashed into pieces. It was like a big man being tackled to the ground by a short boy. The wheels were still spinning at high speed, and the van rolled 360 degrees on the road with the people inside. The doors and windows of the van were damaged and a large amount of cash flew out, raining down on the road. The Batmobile stopped on the road unscathed. The door opened and a mysterious man in a black bat uniform stepped out. He was tall and burly, and his uniform couldn't hide his perfect and muscular body. He wore a black cloak that reached his calves and he wore a bat mask and a helmet with ears. Only his chin was revealed, and his eyes flashed with white light through some kind of device. It's Batman. Many AI civilians exclaimed. The expressions of the criminals in the remaining two vans changed drastically when they saw the man blocking their way. Continue to fight. Retreat immediately. Now that the criminal leader's van had been taken care of, the remaining gangs immediately had different opinions. The criminals in one of the vans got out of the van and prepared to fight Batman, while the vans in the back started to reverse, wanting to retreat. Batman suddenly moved and dashed 10 meters away. Although the criminals who got out of the van had already opened fire, the bullets all landed behind and on both sides of him. Batman closed in and used both his hands and feet to display exquisite and powerful combat skills. In just a few seconds, the criminals who had the advantage of guns and numbers were all neatly knocked to the ground. None of them could last more than 2 or 3 rounds with him, a top human who had been set up as a combat master. After taking care of the criminals who got out of the van to fight him, Batman raised his head coldly and looked at the criminal vans that had fled 100 meters away. He suddenly raised his hand and launched a steel claw which hooked onto the wall of a building in the distance. The steel cable pulled him straight into the sky. In the sky, Batman opened his hands, and his cape seemed to turn into bat wings as he swiftly chased after the remaining criminal vans. Witnessing this dramatic turn of events with their own eyes, not just the AI civilians, but even the players were stunned as they watched Batman leave in a daze. Batman didn't say anything during the entire process of punishing the criminals, but his actions and methods weren't sloppy at all. He was like a dark knight who lived purely for justice. Chapter 373. It would be developed and manufactured in 3 days. On the 4th day it would be released for sale. On the same day, it would officially start operations in New York. The virtual space, Skynet, and the holographic VR helmet, these futuristic technological creations, were miraculously and rapidly born in less than half a week. Many players who bought the holographic VR helmet with a dubious mentality because of the fame of Stark Industries and Caesar immediately fell into the virtual world after trying it a little. They could get rid of the constraints of reality and create new virtual characters. They could easily travel around the world and the universe at home. They could join a country's army and fight with real guns and bullets. They could make friends with superheroes and evil villains. They could explore the dark underwater world or the dazzling city in the sky. They could even dance in an interstellar bar the size of the moon. In Skynet, players could satisfy all their fantasies. The Son of God, Caesar, has taken the first step into the legendary realm. The holographic VR helmet. This is the greatest high-tech product in the 21st century. There is no other. Skynet has arrived. A new virtual era has officially begun. What are you waiting for? No one could resist the charm of the virtual world of Skynet. The news media that bought the holographic VR helmet turned into the ultimate water army for the first time. The newspapers and short messages on the internet were full of positive publicity. There was not a single negative or even positive review. The local people in New York were in an uproar. It was as if they did not buy a holographic helmet, they would be completely out of touch with the current era. It triggered an unprecedented craze and popularity. Other cities and countries went crazy. With red eyes, they applied for Stark Industries to cover Skynet outside of New York as soon as possible. If in the 1920s Stark Industries used mobile phones, computers and firearms to officially create an immortal business empire, then today's holographic VR helmet not only allowed it to directly get out of the trough predicament it was in, but it also added a brilliant and unsolvable aura of invincibility. On the outskirts of New York, in a remote ancient villa building. With a violent thud, the VR helmet hit the ground hard. The front glass shield immediately shattered into several pieces. The wreckage and parts scattered all over the smooth floor. The blonde beauty in a sexy dress leaned against the wall not far away, trembling. She did not dare to make a sound. The bulky bodyguard looked at the wreckage on the ground with a slight heartache. Looking at the furious Jillian, he asked cautiously, "Boss, what should we do now? It wasn't easy for us to make Stark Industries fall to the bottom, and we were surrounded by negative news. Now this new technological product. You don't have to tell me, I know." Jillian gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, his face full of unwillingness. After personally understanding the Skynet, he knew that the previous conspiracy in operation against Stark Industries had been completely scrapped. Too powerless. 20 years ago, he had experienced this feeling of powerlessness due to the difference in their abilities from Tony Stark. However, he did not expect that today, 20 years later, he who had developed the ultimate creature and thought that he stood at the pinnacle of the biological field, would have to learn from a child who was not even 1 year old. "We haven't lost yet." Jillian's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the bodyguard like a wild beast. His voice was hoarse as he ordered, "Send all of our men to Stark Industries in New York. Blow up that building. At any cost." The bodyguard sucked in a breath of cold air and hurriedly replied, "Yes. I'll arrange it right away." After the bodyguard left, Jillian narrowed his eyes coldly and muttered to himself, "Didn't you declare war? Then as you wish." On the other side. Stark Industries, inside the chairman's office in the main office building. Annie was wearing her usual work uniform. Her shiny and slender blonde hair was draped over her shoulders, paired with a knee-length skirt and long black stockings. She was holding a document in her hands as she stood upright and waited. In front of her there were 2 biological cabins, one big and one small. The cabins were made of silver metal and resembled the freezer cabins of space capsules. It was marked with a design made by Stark Industries. At this time it was closed and in an operating state. This was a holographic VR function cabin, which was still in the internal use stage. Compared to the helmets on the market, the function cabin could achieve 95% realism. After the user entered the Skynet, it could provide nutrients to the body continuously. "With my salary I can only afford a VR helmet, right?" Annie looked at the function cabin and sighed slightly. After all, Caesar had said that the price of the function cabin would be more than 100 times higher than the helmet. Click. The 2 function cabins made a beeping sound. Then the doors of the cabins opened, revealing Caesar and Eddie lying inside. Both of them were only wearing casual shorts. Their upper bodies were naked, and their bodies were surrounded by white cold air. Annie didn't say anything and waited patiently. After a few seconds, Caesar and Eddie opened their eyes and got up drowsily from the cabins as if they had just woken up. "Wow, why are you here?" When Eddie saw Annie standing in front of the cabin, he was shocked and hurriedly covered his private parts with both hands. "Oh, Eddie. I appointed her as my personal secretary. She has the authority to enter the chairman's office." Caesar wasn't surprised. His body floated and his whole body left the cabin. He stretched in the air in the room. "I've seen what I should see. Why are you still covering up?" Annie spat and ignored Eddie. She picked up a small shirt and put it on for Caesar. "Buddy. Do you want me to put it on for you? Toxin laughed strangely and reached out a black tentacle. It swayed back and forth in front of Eddie's eyes. No need. Eddie quickly walked out of the utility cabin, picked up a t-shirt and put it on his head. After putting on the shirt, Caesar leaned back as if he was sitting in the air. He asked Annie, "Since you're here, is there any news from the Overgod?" Eddie couldn't help but look at Annie when he heard that. Yes. Annie nodded and handed a document to Caesar. An hour ago, the Overgod found a place in the outskirts of New York. A user with an abnormal body temperature used a holographic VR device to access Skynet. That's right. Caesar smiled and took the document. The GM of Skynet was the Overgod. The VR device also had the ability to scan a person's body and pinpoint their location. Young master. I didn't expect them to fall for it. I thought they would have to wait until tomorrow or the day after, Eddie said happily. Caesar crossed his arms and said confidently, if their target is Stark Industries, they will definitely try to buy the holographic VR device as soon as it comes out. Eddie continued, clenched his fist and said proudly, when they know that they can't stop Stark Industries from getting out of trouble, their primary target is no longer Stark Industries and Miss Potts. Instead, they will directly shift their target to you, young master. Young Master Caesar, then aren't you in danger now? Annie's hair stood on end. She looked at Caesar worriedly. Caesar smiled and didn't answer the question. Eddie also smiled and looked at Caesar. He said playfully, young master, when do you think they will make a move on you? Caesar was about to speak when his ears twitched. He looked out the window and his line of sight instantly reached 10 miles away. Caesar narrowed his eyes. They're already here. Batman was maintaining order in the virtual Gotham City. It was time for Superman in the real world to take off in New York. Chapter 374. It's here? Hearing Caesar's inexplicable words, Annie was still in a daze. Eddie also looked at the floor-to-ceiling window in the office and suddenly realized something as he shouted, "Poison!" I know, it's a fatal danger to humans, hurry up and put on the mask. The moment Poison's slightly hoarse voice sounded, a black liquid immediately overflowed from Eddie's body. Poison's body wrapped around his body at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then it quickly expanded and molded into a complete tough shell for fighting. About half a second later, Eddie had transformed into a tall and burly dark monster. He had a pair of long and fierce white eyes. His bulging muscles and hideous tattoos were a shocking sight to behold, but it also gave the petite Annie an indescribable sense of security. At the same time, Caesar floated in the air of the office and calmly stared at the blue sky outside the window. There was a scorching white wave passing through the sky at supersonic speed, and in the blink of an eye, it passed through countless high-rise buildings and headed straight for the main office of Stark Industries where they were. What the hell is that? Annie opened her eyes wide in shock, and the vague outline of a missile was reflected in her beautiful pupils. In a panic, she could only cover her wide-open mouth with both hands, and her thin and delicate body trembled in fear as she kept retreating to a position against the wall until there was no place to retreat. When humans faced with such a high-end hot weapon attack, they had no choice but to wait for death. Don't worry, I'm here. Eddie suddenly let out a low growl and got into a running posture. Both of his legs suddenly sprinted, and the powerful burst of energy even shattered the floor where he was standing. He rushed a few steps forward violently, and when he approached the window, he sped up again and leaped forward. Clang. Eddie simply broke through the French window. His extraordinary leap made him look as if he had a rocket installed on his back. He leaped 50 meters in the air at the same level as the horizon. Then he spread his huge hands and exposed his sturdy chest. Just like that, he gave a bear hug to the missile that was coming from afar at an extremely fast speed. He was going to use his body to intercept the missile and prevent the Stark Industries building from taking the destructive blow head-on. Don't. Seeing this suicidal scene, Annie shouted, but in the next moment, her voice was completely suppressed by the sound waves that were hundreds of times louder. Boom! The thunderous explosion resounded over half of New York City. The local people in New York looked up and were shocked to see an explosion cloud in the sky in front of the Stark office building. The frenzied shockwaves rippled outwards inch by inch. Although the Stark Industries office building did not hit the missile head-on, the aftermath of the powerful missile explosion still shattered the glass on the surface of the entire building in an instant. The air pressure rushed in, causing the people in chairs in the room to tumble to the other side of the wall. A tall, dark human figure broke the guardrail outside the window, and then bounced back into the chairman's office. Eddie, are you okay? With a helpless sob, Annie fumbled around the office, but due to the thick smoke she couldn't find his exact location. Don't worry. Eddie won't die so easily after being hit by a normal missile. Even at this time Caesar's young voice was still calm and gentle. His small body rose to the top of the room, and he puffed up his cheeks and blew around his body. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew out from his small mouth. It whistled and blew away the thick smoke that lingered in the room through the window. The view in the waiting room gradually became clear. Annie saw that the original office had already been destroyed. There was a deep trench on the floor from the window to the inside. Eddie, who was completely covered, was sitting in the corner at the end. Half of his body was deeply embedded in the wall, and he looked like he had been hollowed out. The dark monster's body was emitting a hot burnt smell. Cough cough. This sour feeling is really hard to describe in words. Eddie was in so much pain that he bared his fangs and spat out circles of black smoke. He slowly stood up from the broken wall. When he saw Annie, who was in tears, he touched the back of his head and said, "Annie, don't tell me you're crying because you're worried about me." "Who's worried about you?" Annie blushed and spat. She was not surprised that Eddie could withstand the missile. Not only was he not seriously injured, but he also recovered in such a short time. "Be serious. Don't embarrass the enemy," Caesar complained. At this time, the smoke outside the window had quietly dispersed. What followed was the sound of many aircraft engines. The few of them looked towards the source of the sound. They could see a few military helicopters and fighter jets approaching the office from afar. F***CK, are you bullying me because I can't fly? Eddie whispered hoarsely. After being completely covered by the poison, his temperament had turned cold and murderous. He shook off the ashes on his body and was about to rush out to fight the enemy. "All right, wait for a moment." Caesar waved his hand and stopped him. He said unhappily, "Aerial combat is not your strength. You stay and protect Annie." But Eddie was about to say something when Caesar interrupted him. "No buts." "All right then." Eddie was helpless. He could not do anything to Caesar. He could only turn around and carry the petite Annie with his thick arms. The two of them looked like a beauty and a beast. "Leave the rest to me and the Overlord." Caesar stretched and suddenly accelerated in the air. He was like a falcon flapping its wings. He accelerated and flew out of the building. He turned into a stream of light and disappeared in the direction where the enemy aircraft appeared. Annie was shocked again. She watched as Caesar's small figure disappeared into the distance. She looked up at Eddie and asked nervously, "Eddie, what should we do now? If something happens to the young master, Stark Industries, which has finally gotten out of the trough, will be finished." Eddie grinned and said emotionally, "Believe in the young master. To be honest, when I first met the young master, I didn't believe what the poison said to me. Now I'm finally sure of it and I'm convinced." "What do you mean?" Annie asked in surprise. Eddie took a deep breath and said seriously, "The young master is very strong. He's even stronger than me now." Thousands of meters away from the Stark Industries office building, hundreds of meters in the air, 5 armed helicopters buzzed as they flew. They were connected to Jillian on the outskirts of New York. "Boss." The first missile was intercepted about 50 meters away from the target building. "I suspect that Stark Industries has installed a missile interceptor system." "Missile interceptor system? I've been working in that building for half a year. How come I don't know about this?" Jillian was a little confused when he heard the report. He replied sternly, "Continue to bombard with the ammunition provided by the armed helicopters." "Yes." Not long after, the terrorist who was flying the armed helicopters reported anxiously, Boss, we detected an unknown object approaching us. It's very small but it's very fast." Chapter 375. In the outskirts of New York, in the basement of an ancient villa. "What is that little guy? Concentrate all your firepower. We need to retreat immediately or send emergency reinforcements. His speed is too fast, it's hard to lock onto him." The communication line from the armed helicopter sent back by the dispatch team was a mess of voices coming back from tens of kilometers away. The vague words of the pilots were filled with shock and uncontrollable screams of fear. It was as if they had encountered a destructive attack from a mysterious enemy. "Tell me clearly, what did you see and who are you fighting with?" Jillian's forehead was covered with bean-sized sweat, dripping down and wetting his white shirt. He shouted into the microphone, hoping to get some feedback from the enemy, but several communication channels on the other side began to fail one after another. "Boss, help." After the last scream faintly sounded, the communication channel was only left with a strange busy tone, and the basement fell into an extremely oppressive silence. Jilian's face was pale, he slumped on the chair and stared blankly at the communication desk. He didn't need to use his brain to know that the underground forces that he had cultivated for 20 years had mostly disappeared at that moment. He thought that after Iron Man left Earth, no one would be able to stop his plan, but he didn't expect that a child would appear out of nowhere and turn the fruits that he had cultivated over the years into a colorful bubble that would burst with a single poke. After a moment, Jilian suddenly stood up, his hands clenched into fists, his nails completely digging into his palms. The pain forced him to calm down. I haven't lost yet, I still have a very important hostage in my hands. Jilian took a deep breath, hurriedly took off his suit jacket, threw it on the ground and rushed upstairs. Everyone gather, go and bring pots down from the second floor, we're going to evacuate this place. Jilian ran and shouted anxiously until he reached the stairs on the first floor. He realized that something was wrong, all the movements of his body suddenly stopped. In the grand and spacious hall on the first floor, it was quiet, not to mention the bodyguard's response, not even half a blonde beauty's shadow could be seen. Where did everyone go at this critical moment? Jilian whispered blankly. He didn't transfer the bodyguards in the villa away, the ones who were sent to attack Stark Industries were the armed forces stationed in other places. At this moment, a young voice sounded in the hall. Oh, you took the initiative to come up, I've been waiting for you here for a while. Who is it? Jilian was shocked. His body was on high alert as he walked towards the source of the strange voice. When he got close to the sofa, he was shocked to find that a little blonde boy was lying on the sofa chair at some point in time. You look familiar, I seem to have seen you before. While Killian was looking at the blonde boy, the boy was also looking at him with his eyes wide open. A strange and innocent smile appeared on his fair little face. What? I just declared war on you a few days ago. Have you forgotten so quickly? Caesar curled his lips in slight displeasure. He took out a lollipop from his pocket and immediately tore open the plastic wrapper and stuffed it into his mouth. Jilian's face was gloomy and uncertain. He looked at the corridor and courtyard outside the villa and asked calmly, "Where are my bodyguards? Obviously they were all killed by my people." While Caesar was talking, there was a clear sound of footsteps on the stairs. Jilian looked up and saw a classic model Iron Man with gold and red paint walking down the stairs. The mechanical hands were still holding the unconscious Miss Potts. "Iron Man, you still came back?" Jilian looked like he was facing a great enemy and couldn't help but take a step back. But then the front door behind him suddenly opened. Two identical Mark III Iron Men, some parts of their bodies still had burn marks from the fierce battle with the genetically modified people, walked into the hall with slightly stiff movements. 3 Iron Mans. Killian was really scared this time. Caesar explained in a childish voice, "Don't panic. They are not Tani, they are just Iron Man suits controlled by the artificial intelligence Lord God." Battle suit. Jilian stared at one of the Iron Men. The mask of the Iron Man suddenly opened, revealing the empty body of the unmanned vehicle, as well as the intricate parts with extremely high craftsmanship and the shining Krypton energy core. Caesar continued with the candy in his mouth. "In the past few days, I not only asked the Lord God to create Skynet and holographic VR helmets, but also restarted the secret studio left by Tani. Using the Mark III he created as a prototype, I mass-produced a batch of Iron Man army to deal with your genetically modified people." The next result, Caesar didn't need to say more, Jilian already knew. Just now, the top technological battle suit created by Tani and the ultimate modified creatures he created had a life-and-death battle outside the villa. Obviously, in the end, his modified people were completely wiped out. In fact, this was not a fair battle. After all, the battle suit had no life. As long as there were enough materials and energy, it could be mass-produced continuously. In the battle between the top technology and the top creature's invention, in the end, Tony Stark won by a little. Jilian said to himself in disappointment, his beliefs collapsed, his years of hard work were hit hard by reality, and he leaned on the back of the sofa without strength. Caesar looked at Jilian and said bluntly, "I'm sorry. Tani's battlesuit invention can indeed be regarded as a major field of top technology, and your so-called ultimate biological research is still far from the top field of biology." "What did you say?" Jilian looked at Caesar with a slightly distorted face as if he was provoked. Everything he had could be trampled on or denied, but the ultimate biological research that he had worked hard for half his life was his reverse scale that could not be touched. "I've said it very clearly." Caesar jumped off the sofa and walked to Jilian step by step. He raised his small head and said uninterestedly, "Your ultimate biological research can only be regarded as a failed semi-finished product. it can't be called the top at all. A mere genetically modified human body could only produce a temperature below 1,500 degrees Celsius, and any higher and it would self-destruct. If this could be called the top field of biology, then what would Hulk, Quicksilver, and even Captain Marvel be? You deserve to die. Ji Lian roared and suddenly launched an attack, fiercely pouncing on Caesar. His body temperature rapidly soared in the air, his skin was red, and his internal organs and bones could be seen. He did not see how Caesar dodged. He only saw his small feet move, and then Ji Lian, who was surrounded by lava, flew back at an extremely fast speed, smashing through the wall and smashing into the fountain in the courtyard outside, and was swallowed by the water with a sizzling sound. Caesar looked at the rising water vapor, shrugged and said, "There's one more thing I forgot to tell you. The one who dealt with those armed helicopters just now was not the Iron Man army but me." Chapter 376. The crisis of Stark Industries was eliminated after the villain behind the scenes was arrested. Caesar handed over the remaining genetically modified people to S.H.L.D. and the Avengers to clean up the mess. Due to Skynet and the holographic VR helmet, New York's economic and technological development was several times faster than in previous years. It was at the forefront of the trend of the times, and there was an amazing trend of gradually turning from the economic city to the city of the future. At the same time, Caesar was in front of the Stark office building, blocking the terrorists' helicopter in the air alone. The details of this incident were recorded by many passers-by in videos, which were frequently broadcast on the internet, newspapers, and even TV, causing a shock and uproar all over the world. A child less than 1 year old had the creative ability of Iron Man, the extraordinary strength of the symbol of peace, and the righteous character of Captain America. Caesar's limelight completely took off after this battle. Some people called him the second generation of heroes. After all, he was the descendant of the symbol of peace. Such achievements were worthy of the name of a hero family. Some people called him the Son of God. After all, Caesar was still very young, but as one of the most powerful superheroes on Earth, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a god. There were even more people who preferred another brand new name, Superman. In other words, a mortal who was beyond the scope of human beings. Of course, no matter how the people discussed it, even if they called him Superman in the end, Caesar would not pay attention to it. The safe return of Potts quickly stabilized the morale within Stark Industries. The one who benefited the most was undoubtedly Caesar himself. He once again became a hands-off shopkeeper, leaving the production of new products to the Lord God. He officially returned to his leisure life after waking up. From time to time he would go to the S.H.L.D. base to practice his combat skills with Captain America and master the constantly increasing strength of his body. Or he would go to Stark Industries to guide the research direction of new technological products and integrate some black technology into the current New York City. Sometimes he would even drag Eddie along, and the two of them would be busy running back and forth between the southern and northern hemispheres. They would rescue large aircraft that had crashed, annihilate rampant terrorists, and even intervene in natural disasters that happened in certain areas. This was the daily life of Caesar's clone on Earth. Another 2.5 years passed. During this period, Earth did not suffer from any foreign invasion. Everything was carried out in an orderly manner under peaceful circumstances. December 24, 2011, Christmas. Today was a brand new day. In the early morning of winter, the golden sunlight shone down in the cold air, and the light overflowed into the windowsill on the 21st floor of a residential building. Inside, Eddie's clothes were scattered on the floor. He was wearing a full set of pajamas, hugging a bulging quilt and sleeping soundly on the bed. A black cat was lying lazily beside the bed, snoring as well. Dong, dong. Suddenly there was a slight knocking sound outside the window. "Eddie, it seems that someone is knocking on the window." A woman under the quilt reminded him with a lisp. "How is that possible? This is the 21st floor." Eddie mumbled in a daze. He didn't even want to open his eyes. He turned over and continued to fall into the winter dream. Meow. Surprisingly, the black cat woke up. It squinted its eyes and stretched its body. It squatted on the ground and wagged its tail. It looked at the window covered by the curtains, and there was a hint of human-like understanding in its vertical beastly eyes. Dong, dong. The knocking sound continued, but Eddie in the room was still unmoved. After 3 seconds of silence, the window seemed to have been bombarded by a powerful explosion. Under the humming sound of air pressure, the entire wall shattered and collapsed inwards. Dust billowed, and sunlight from outside flooded the room without any obstructions. Damn, an earthquake? Eddie was awakened by the loud noise. He jumped out of bed, no longer sleepy, and looked out of the window anxiously. There was a blond boy about 5 years old, stepping on air and walking into the room. He had a lollipop in his mouth, his left hand in his trouser pocket, and the other hand waving at him. "Morning, Eddie." "Morning, young master," Eddie replied subconsciously. He glanced blankly at the wall that was heavily damaged by an external force. Then, as if he had just woken up from a dream, he gritted his teeth and said, "Earlier? Can you come in through the front door next time? I've asked people to repair the windows and the outer wall dozens of times." The black cat jumped onto the bed, licked its paws and gloated. "I'll knock on the window," Caesar replied without any expression. "Oh, I see." Eddie nodded and hesitated for half a second. He couldn't help but growl, "Knock on the door, bastard." Caesar pointed at the hole in the wall and suggested seriously, "Why don't you open a door on the wall next time?" "All right. You came to me so early, and where are you going? Don't tell me you're going to fight some deep-sea monsters again?" Eddie didn't have the strength to complain. He reached out his hand to the black cat, and the black liquid that was the main body of the poison immediately separated from the black cat and merged back into his body. "Isn't it Christmas today?" As he said that, Caesar smiled and said, "The Avengers have a group dinner at noon. Steve informed me and asked me to bring you along." "Dinner? That's more like it." Eddie exhaled lightly, changed his clothes, and prepared to follow Caesar to the base. However, when he turned around, he saw Caesar standing at the edge of the damaged wall, looking at the distant sky with a serious expression. "What's wrong now?" Seeing this, Aid walked over in surprise. When he raised his head, he was shocked to find that there was a strange five-colored light and shadow in the sky over there. Caesar's eyes were complicated. After a moment of silence, he whispered, "An outsider has come to Earth." "What did you say?" Eddie's body trembled, but he quickly felt relieved. He clenched his fists tightly. "After waiting for so long, it's finally here. Let's go, let's meet up with the Avengers first." Caesar grabbed Eddie's arm. His body moved, and in a flash he moved from the room to the top floor of the building. Then he turned into a stream of light and rushed into the distance at supersonic speed. At this time, Earth was separated by an unknown number of light years in the distant outer space. Up, down, left, and right, there was no end to the distance. It was pitch black and lonely, with only a few planets flickering weakly as coordinates. An Eagle-style space warship with a blue flame trailing behind it kept jumping light years, as if it was drifting aimlessly in outer space. Although its speed far exceeded any spaceship on Earth, it was undoubtedly crawling at the speed of a turtle in the vast Milky Way. 3 years had passed since Kale and the others set off from Earth and fumbled their way to the Milky Way Alliance. These 3 years of interstellar travel were not completely wasted. At least in the constant correction of the itinerary, there were rumors of Earth's terrifying natives appearing in a corner of the universe. And after repeated confirmation, the Eagle space warship finally approached the region called the Milky Way Alliance. Chapter 377. Inside the Eagle space warship. Beep beep. In the spaceship lounge that was full of technology, 3 frozen hibernation chambers were arranged in a row. Only the hibernation chamber in the middle was in operation. Estimated hibernation time reached. Beginning awakening. Following the mechanical notification, the door of the hibernation chamber slowly opened. White cold air gushed out, revealing a curvy and seductive female body. It was a beautiful young lady about 23 years old. Her facial features were exquisite and perfect, and her dark green curly hair was laid lazily at the bottom of the chamber. She wore a tight and comfortable spacesuit, and her breathing rate was so low that it was almost zero. She was like a sleeping beauty in a fairy tale who slept on an ice bed. After the chamber door opened for a while, the young lady's slender eyelashes trembled slightly, and her delicate eyebrows furrowed slightly. Her consciousness gradually emerged from her long sleep. She opened her beautiful eyes that were as bright as gemstones. After blinking blankly, she instinctively sat up. When her vision entered the familiar lounge of the space warship, her brain's corresponding thoughts returned to the embrace of reality. "Did you sleep well, Lorna?" It was the same system notification as before, but it seemed like an AI program had been replaced, and it was more like a humanized tease. "Wise." Lorna covered her forehead, still feeling a little uncomfortable after waking up. Her bare feet stepped on the floor and she left the hibernation chamber. She approached the transparent floor-to-ceiling window of the lounge and stretched her curvy body. "How long did I sleep this time?" Boss and Tani? Vice replied, you slept for 60 days and 7 hours, almost a year. Tani and Jarvis stayed in the workshop for a long time, while Boss stayed in the pilot's cabin. So long? Lorna was shocked. She thought she had only slept for a month or two, but she didn't expect a year to pass. Well, really? Vice didn't think so. After all, artificial intelligence creatures had an almost endless amount of time since they were created. Kale, who had long become a god, also didn't feel anything about time. If I had known, I wouldn't have slept. Lorna was a little frustrated. This was an opportunity that Yu Tong had fought for her to accompany her boss. If she wasted most of this interstellar journey sleeping, who would she cry to? I've already informed the boss. He wants you to go to the main cockpit, Vice said through the microphone. He didn't know what Lorna was thinking. Boss is looking for me? I'll head over immediately. Lorna blurted out. She had just taken a few steps when she suddenly stopped and looked down at her body. She turned around and waved her hand embarrassedly. Wait for me. I'll take a shower first. Even though she had been in the hibernation chamber all this time, not to mention obvious dirt, she couldn't even be contaminated by bacteria or dust. However, as a woman, it was still hard for her to accept the thought of not bathing for a year. Half an hour later, Lorna was wearing a loose fabric shirt. She was wiping her dark green curly hair with a towel. A few strands of hair were draped over her shoulders or draped over her collarbone, giving off a mature and seductive feminine charm. His fingerprint was unlocked and he opened the door of the main cockpit. As soon as Lorna stepped into the main cockpit, a strong gust of hot wind blew over. The heat waves were rolling, and her wet dark green hair was instantly dried. What's going on? Lorna's eyes widened in shock and bewilderment. Inside the spacious main cockpit, the silver-haired Kale stood and floated in midair. Indescribable light and heat energy gathered in his fists and legs, and circles of scorching light ripples spread out in the air, maintaining the temperature in the room above 50 degrees Celsius. As if he had heard Lorna's exclamation, Kyle's eyes suddenly opened, and a light as bright as day flashed through his eyes. Then, the indescribable strange energy in his body began to die down, and the light in the room gradually returned to its normal comfortable state. Kale landed on the floor and heaved a sigh of relief. He waved at Lorna, who was at the door. Lorna immediately went over and hugged one of his arms naturally. As the Aurora lingered, she helped him to a seat on the side without asking any questions. Boss, have some water. Lorna reached out and skillfully used magnetic field mastery, and a metal thermos flew over from the cockpit. Kale took the thermos, unscrewed the cap and gulped down half the bottle of water. Only then did a relieved expression appear on his handsome face. Boss, what was that just now? Lorna looked at Kale worriedly. She had seen fire elemental divine power many times, but it was definitely not the terrifying scene of energy raging and fluctuating like just now. Also, it was too thought-provoking to be able to make Kale, who had a divine body, feel tired. You're talking about this, right? Kale smiled faintly. He gently snapped his fingers in front of Lorna's eyes, and a dazzling energy stream quickly appeared between his fingers and disappeared in an instant. Lorna's hair stood on end as she faced the materialization of that energy at close range. She truly felt an extremely destructive power from it. Actually, I don't know what's going on either. The chair was only for one person. Kale shrugged nonchalantly and pulled Lorna's soft body into his arms. He let her sit on his lap and gently sniffed the pleasant fragrance of her dark green hair. He also sank into deep thought about the current situation of his body. For someone like him who pursued evolution and strength, this naturally wasn't caused by the domination of his lower body. He simply felt that this position was comfortable, so he did it without any worries. The usually arrogant and cold punk girl Lorna was currently lying in Kale's arms with her eyes narrowed like an obedient kitten. Kale didn't think too much and continued, "Half a year ago I sparred with Tani, who had modified the new battle suit. I used my body to take his strengthened palm light cannon head on. From then on, a brand new energy suddenly appeared in my body. As long as it fused with fire elemental divine power, it would become that strange energy just now. It was as if a key had suddenly appeared in a sealed box and unlocked it within his body. No wonder. The energy you released just now, apart from the scorching fire elemental characteristics of the past, was mixed with even more powerful light elemental characteristics." Lorna nodded thoughtfully and asked Kale worriedly, "This change won't harm your body, will it?" "That won't happen." Kale shook his head and said, "I can feel that the potential of this fused energy is far greater than just the fire elemental divine power from before. However, it takes too much energy and stamina. Even though I spent half a year controlling it, I still can't perfectly control it. The fire divine power that had fused with the mysterious energy source was indeed much more powerful and destructive. Furthermore, it could strengthen one's physical body. However, it was precisely because it was far too powerful that it could be destroyed with a single thought. It was very difficult to adjust its precise release and use. Chapter 378. After Kyle explained his physical condition, he brought Lorna along and the two of them headed to the workroom inside the space warship. Sui Meng Xiao Shua WW Sui Meng Com. The so-called workroom was actually a storage room specially modified by Tani. All the equipment was equipped with the best technology on Earth. Ever since it was built, Kale and Lorna basically didn't step foot in it. It became the special area for Tani, the manufacturing maniac, to eat, drink, play, and sleep. It could be said that on this interstellar journey, Lorna had spent the most time hibernating, Tani had spent the most time researching, and Kale had spent the most time cultivating the subtle fusion of fire-type godly power and mysterious light energy. Vice followed along in the cable. Before Kale could unlock it, the workroom's protective door slowly opened by itself. Kale and Lorna entered the workroom one after another. They could see all kinds of battlesuit parts scattered on the floor. Tani, who was wearing protective glasses, was lying in front of the computer and constantly checking and adjusting the parameters with Jarvis. Hearing the sound of the warehouse door opening, Tony turned around. When he saw the two of them, his focused body finally relaxed. He looked at Lorna meaningfully, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he teased, "Lorna, you slept a little too long. Uncle Tani, you've aged quite a bit after a year." Lorna held onto Kale's arm and stuck her tongue out at Tani. Kale smiled. In reality, Tani had the life-saving card he gave him and the infinite equation potion to slow down cell death. His aging was definitely lower than before he left Earth. It was a pity that he didn't care about his appearance for the past few years and stayed in this workroom all year round. His messy curly hair and beard made him look even more aged. Tani didn't mind and smiled confidently. For a top engineer, what you see should be the results of his research and not his appearance. Also, you're the only woman on this space warship. There's no need to spend time dressing up. Boss is indeed different. She looked down at the parts on the ground and asked curiously, "Then what's the result of your research in the past year?" "Tani, I'm curious too." Kale nodded in agreement. Previously, Tani had said that there was a new breakthrough in the Mark battle suit, and he hadn't seen it yet. Now beside your feet is a brand new Mark 7. Tani proudly stretched out his hand and pointed at the armor parts on the ground. He wore a new smart bracelet on his wrist, which was obviously closely related to Jarvis and the armor. Mark 7? Kale's heart skipped a beat. Before this, Tani had only used the Mark 4 in combat. He didn't expect him to jump 3 steps in just 3 years. This pile of scrap metal? It can't be, right? Lorna blinked in disbelief. Then take a good look. Tani patted his slim-fit uniform and raised his left hand with the smart bracelet. He hooked 2 fingers at the parts on the ground and shouted loudly, "Battle suit come." Kale looked at the armor parts on the ground, but there was no reaction. The workshop fell into an awkward silence. After a long while, Lorna covered her mouth and laughed. Tani's face was red as he held his breath. He stared at the parts on the ground and urged, "Come on, please succeed for me once." Under his expectant gaze, the steel mask finally floated up into the air. "Look, it's almost done," Tani said excitedly. Before he could finish, the steel mask suddenly sped up and landed on Lorna's palm. Damn magnetic field control. Tani almost fainted when he saw this. "All right, Lorna. Stop messing with Tani. And Vice, you're also secretly influencing Jarvis, aren't you?" Kale seemed to have seen through everything as he spoke calmly to the computer screen. "I still can't hide it from you, Master." A grimace appeared on the screen as Vice chuckled. She was pressing Jarvis in a philosophical argument. Kale was a little speechless. Carrying an artificial intelligence could make his daily life more convenient. If 2 artificial intelligences were in the same room, it would be like raising 2 huskies that only knew how to play. The efficiency would be greatly reduced. "I won't influence Jarvis and the battlesuit program anymore. Tani, you can continue." Hearing Vice's words, Tani took a deep breath and hooked his finger at the armor parts on the ground again. The next moment, more than 10 mechanical parts floated up and accelerated toward Tani in the center of the workshop. Clang, clang, clang. The mechanical parts corresponded to their respective body parts and automatically covered Tani's body. In 2 seconds they formed the rough outline of an Iron Man. In the end, the mask in Lorna's hand flew away and covered the mature face. Only then did a golden-red Iron Man stand on the ground. His chest, eye sockets and various engines were flashing with blue light. How is it? I've added new functions such as close combat assistance, remote positioning, short-term oxygen supply in water or outer space, red laser beam and so on. Tani stretched his body. The battle suit stuck to his body and didn't slow down at all. Do you want to try it with me? Lorna's eyes lit up. She was eager to try. Kale also had the urge to fight. Forget it. Tani curled his lips and immediately became dejected. Before he found a replacement material for the battle suit, he was determined not to fight with Lorna. As for Godfather and Kale, after experiencing the baptism of energy fusion, they didn't want to experience the feeling of the battle suit melting and surviving a disaster again. Just then the warship tilted without warning. Then Vice and Jarvis's warning sounded. Everyone, 3 unknown spaceships have appeared behind us. They're approaching our space warship. Unknown communication waves are coming. They're requesting to connect with us. Do you approve? Unknown spaceships? Kale and the others looked at each other. After wandering for 3 years, they had encountered many black holes, meteorites and barbaric civilizations. However, they had never encountered any spaceships from other advanced civilizations. Tani looked at Kale and couldn't hide his excitement. Godfather, could it be that we've finally entered the territory of the Milky Way Alliance? Let's go to the main cockpit first and understand the situation. Kale narrowed his eyes. Main cockpit. When Kale and the other 2 arrived, they could directly see the situation behind the warship on the screen. As expected. About a few thousand meters away, a mid-sized spaceship led by 2 small spaceships formed a fleet of spaceships chasing after them. Jarvis, they're still requesting to connect with us. Do you approve? Kyle pondered for a moment and nodded his head. I agree to the connection. Tani and Lorna held their breaths. After a few seconds, strange words came from the communicator. This is the language of the Milky Way Alliance. Chapter 379. The language of the Milky Way Alliance? What did they say? Tani hadn't taken off his new battle armor yet. His special alloy eye sockets shone brightly as he looked at Kale in shock. He didn't expect that Godfather, who was almost omnipotent and omniscient on Earth, would actually be able to grasp the common language of the civilizations in this universe so many light years away from Earth. Lorna was excited and also waited for Kale's answer. Kale looked at the space battleships on the screen and compared the combat power of both sides. He pondered and said, They said that the space control within 10 light years of here requires our illegally invading spaceship to stop immediately and accept inspection. Otherwise they will launch a fierce attack. Space control? Tani shook his head and snorted. Could it be a robber? He planted this tree and opened this road. If we want to pass through here, we have to leave something behind. This is outer space. How can there be trees and roads? Lorna rolled her eyes, but she also understood the meaning behind Tani's analogy. Planting trees, opening a road, and even space control might just be an excuse to make them obediently stop the space battleship. Kale naturally thought of this long ago. Without thinking too much, he ordered the Vice controlling the space battleship. Vice, stop the space battleship. Hearing this, Tani and Lorna were shocked. However, they weren't stupid. Without waiting for Kale to explain further, they understood his intentions and thoughts. After wandering around for 3 years, they finally encountered a spaceship from a high-tech civilization. It didn't matter if it was a real robber or a fake one, it was precious information delivered to their doorstep. Virum, the Eagle's tail engine stopped, and its speed kept decreasing. Only the small engine was left to maintain its balance. Soon it stopped floating in the vast and boundless outer space. The fleet of unknown interstellar battleships accelerated slightly. 2 small spaceships that were about 3 times the size of the Eagle directly flew past the Eagle, one on the left and one on the right. They stopped in front of the Eagle and blocked its path. The leading interstellar spaceship was the last to arrive. On the display screen, it was only the size of a fist due to the angle of view. However, when it neared the back of the Eagle, it was more than 20 times the size of the Eagle. Compared to it, Earth's helicopter carriers paled in comparison. The interstellar spaceship hovered in outer space, like a pitch-black steel fortress. It completely blocked out the brilliant and mysterious starry sky, casting a boundless shadow over the small Eagle. At this moment, the lower side of the interstellar spaceship suddenly caved in, forming a mouth-like entrance. A green light screen shot out from within and landed on the Eagle fighter. A moment later, a suction force pulled the fighter into it. This scene was extremely similar to a big fish eating a small fish. After passing through the long passageway, the Eagle finally landed in the interior of the interstellar spaceship. The deck of the fighter jet opened. Kale held Lorna's hand and Tani, who was wearing a battle suit, followed closely behind. The three of them walked out of the fighter jet calmly. Swoosh, swoosh. As if they had practiced this countless times, the extraterrestrial guards had been waiting beside the fighter. There were about 30 of them, all wearing slightly bloated white spacesuits. They raised their laser guns and aimed at Kale and the other two. Kale's face was expressionless. He looked around indifferently and said, "Is this how you treat your guests? Aha, put down your weapon first." Among the guards, one of the guards took a few steps forward and took off his tactical helmet, revealing a pointed and ugly face with green skin. He grinned and said, "Outsider, I am the captain of this spaceship's guards, LV Phone. I wonder if you guys..." He had clearly used some sort of translation device, and even Lorna and Tani understood what he said. Green Peak's gloomy gaze swept past Kale and Lorna, who weren't wearing any weapons, before cautiously landing on the fully armored Tani. Kale didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "Are you the captain of this starship?" LV Phone was stunned. He shook his head lightly. "Then take us to see the captain. I don't want to say anything to a hired thug." Kyle glanced at LV Phone, his eyes full of disdain and arrogance, just like a condescending and arrogant attitude. LV Phone seemed to be used to it and wasn't angry. He cheerfully extended his hand and gestured. "Please come this way. The captain is waiting for you in the reception room." Kale didn't answer. He pulled Lorna forward and Tani followed behind as a bodyguard. LV Phone walked at the back with his head lowered. He looked at the beautiful back view of Lorna in Kale's arms and licked his lips. He then looked at Tani, who was wearing his armor, and didn't hide his cold, murderous intent. Green Peak had seen a lot of outsiders like Kyle who came from a remote area of the Milky Way, relying on the local technology to create a spaceship that barely made it to the Milky Way Alliance. Unfortunately, there was only one end for them when they met their interstellar battleship. The corridor was guarded by armed alien guards every 10 meters. Green Peak led Kyle and the others all the way to the entrance of the reception room without any obstructions. Just as they were about to enter the reception room, Tani was suddenly stopped by the guards at the door. "Sorry, this starship has rules. Armed bodyguards are not allowed to enter the reception room." LV Phone smiled and apologized, but there was no trace of apology on his face. When Tani heard this, his temper almost flared up. Kale patted him on the shoulder comfortingly and ordered, "Tani, you stand guard outside the door." Since Godfather had spoken, Tani could only agree. He snorted coldly and stopped outside the door with LV Phone. Kale and Lorna stepped into the room. In the bright and spacious reception room, there were several rows of round tables and chairs in the middle. Similarly, there were many armed guards standing at the side. After the door closed, the innermost round wheelchair suddenly turned 90 degrees. A tall, red-haired alien was sitting on it. He faced Kale and Lorna, spread his hands and said, "Welcome to the Milky Way Alliance. I am the captain of this starship, Renault." Renault waited for Kale and Lorna to sit down before continuing in a polite and warm voice. "Guests from afar, I invited you here with no ill intentions. I just want to make friends. Can you state your identities now?" "My name is Kale. Beside me is my wife, Lorna, and my bodyguard cum butler's AI robot, Tani." Kale introduced them separately. Lorna's delicate cheeks blushed slightly. She snuggled in his arms intimately, acting like the best actress in the show. Luckily, the combination of fire and light energy could suppress the aurora phenomenon caused by magnetic field control. "All right. We are humans from Earth." Kale stared at Renault, wanting to see his reaction. "Earth? Humans?" Renault was slightly stunned. Kale's eyes flashed. He pretended to be curious and asked, "Captain, do you know where Earth is? Or do you know any humans?" Renault waved his hand and asked the guards to bring the drinks. He smiled at Kale and said, "No. I have a friend. He went to Earth before and said that it was a planet with poor resources and a low-level civilization. He also said that the indigenous humans would not be able to leave the solar system and reach our Milky Way Alliance civilization in 100 years. But now it seems that he was wrong. So that's how it is." Kale was enlightened, but he kept an eye out. He did not know which of Renault's words were true and which were false. But he was the same. Both of them were testing each other. Chapter 380. In the reception room of the starship. "Captain, there are 2 guests here. Here are the drinks." A beautiful maid with a pair of horns on her head approached the chair with cat-like steps. She lowered her body slightly in a well-behaved manner, revealing a patch of white skin beneath her low-cut bosom. She then served 3 cups of bubbling sweet yellow drinks to the table. Ah, great. Captain Leo laughed heartily. He casually picked up one of the drinks and offered it to Kale and Lorna. 2 guests from the distant Earth, this is a very famous drink in the Milky Way Alliance. It's spicy with an indescribable sense of pleasure. Isn't that just alcohol? Lorna complained in her heart. She picked up a cup wanting to taste it. However, before she could get close to her lips, she was stopped by Kale. Mr. Kyle? Leo frowned slightly as if he wasn't happy about this. Kale didn't say anything. He raised the cup and looked up at the rising bubbles. He lowered his head and scolded Lorna softly. Lorna, be careful. Don't forget that you're pregnant now. You can't drink such stimulating drinks. Lorna's cheeks turned red. She quickly shrunk her neck and buried her face in Kale's neck. She mumbled, "Fine, I won't drink." So, Madam is already pregnant. Leo saw this and waved his hand happily. The maid with 2 horns could only leave with the drinks. Yes. I won't give her the drinks. Let me have a drink with you, Captain. Kale shook the liquid and raised his cup at Leo. Leo was naturally very happy. He raised his cup and clinked it with Kale's. Ding. The 2 of them raised their heads and finished the drinks in one gulp. Kale only felt that what he drank was similar to a mixture of hard liquor and soft drinks on Earth. It was like a hot stream of air flowing from his throat into his stomach. Great. Very good. After Kyle finished the drink in the cup, Leo's eyes narrowed and the joy on his face became even more apparent. He immediately patted his chest and promised, "Mr. Kyle, I'm going to give you a chance. No matter what, I have been in the Milky Way Alliance for decades. You are new here, there must be many things you are not familiar with. If you have any needs or concerns, I will do my best to help you." That's great. Kale's eyes lit up, and he threw out a question that he did not understand. How did you know we're outsiders? Just by looking at the model of the space warship? Leo laughed involuntarily and shook his head. Of course not. There are so many planetary civilizations in the Milky Way Alliance, and countless of them have reached the technological level of making spaceships in outer space. There are thousands of space warship models, so how could it be so easy to identify the pilot's origin through the model of the space warship? Kale nodded and waited for his further explanation. Let's put it this way. Ordinary planetary civilizations were basically self-sufficient and rarely would they drive spaceships to wander outside. After all, in the boundless outer space, there are too many unknown and known dangers lurking. Leo raised 3 fingers and said slowly, "Spaceships that go out all have distinct power symbols, and only 3 types of people will drive spaceships outside. The first type is people who are under the protection of the New Star Empire. New Star is one of the most prosperous economic planets in the Milky Way Alliance. Many people who are looking for business, trade, and goods will choose to go to New Star. The second type is people from the Kree Star Empire. The Kree people pursue battle and slaughter, and often want to start large-scale wars in the Milky Way Alliance." Speaking up to this point, he suddenly stopped. "Captain, who is the third type?" Kale asked curiously. Leo smiled and said, "The third type is the interstellar hunters. They don't belong to any civilization, and they only wander the outer space for money and resources. On many civilized planets, there is a profession called intermediary. From the intermediary, interstellar hunters can receive bounty missions from civilized planets, hunt creatures with bounties on them, or search for rare items and so on." Kale's heart skipped a beat and he asked anxiously, "Intermediary, do they have a wide network?" Leo answered very confidently, "Of course. The intermediary belongs to the gray area between the black and white apostles. As a middleman, they have dealings with all the major civilizations in the Milky Way Alliance. It can be said that if there is any movement in the Milky Way Alliance, the intermediary will definitely be the second to know." Kale and Lorna looked at each other. If they could find the intermediary, would they still not be able to find the whereabouts of Howard and the rest? Kale didn't think too much and directly said to Leo, "Captain, I want to talk to you about a business deal." "Oh, what kind of business?" Leo instantly became interested and habitually rubbed his palms together. "Bring us to a civilized planet with an intermediary." As Kale spoke, he took out a shiny blue krypton and said calmly, "I will use this energy core as a reward." Once Leo saw the krypton, he couldn't help but stand up, excited and shocked. "This is an energy core? The energy inside is too pure, it actually emits such a beautiful light. How is it? This should be a very simple thing for you guys." Kale didn't hesitate and directly placed the krypton in Leo's palm. Leo held the krypton tightly with both hands and carefully examined it. Greed flashed across his eyes, but he quickly gathered the krypton in his palm, and his face was as calm as water, hiding his joy. He waved his hand, and the armed guards around him immediately rushed forward with their weapons in hand, surrounding the area where Kyle and Lorna were sitting tightly. Kale wasn't surprised by this and instead seemed to have expected it. He sighed slightly and said, "Do we still have to do this?" When Leo mentioned the 3 types of people active in outer space, it basically revealed the identity of Leo and the rest. They were the 3rd type that didn't belong to any civilization, interstellar hunters. To put it bluntly, they could be called interstellar robbers. Leo didn't hide his true nature anymore, and the gentleness from before was all gone, replaced by greed and murderous intent. "You already knew? Then why did you obediently send the energy core to me?" "Alien idiot, boss wants to give you a chance." Lorna suddenly spoke, looking at Leo with pity and disgust in her eyes. "Give me a chance? What chance can you give me, mere Earth natives?" Leo sneered. "From the moment you entered this spaceship, all your belongings belong to us. Are you still hoping that the iron bodyguard outside can rush in and save you? I'm guessing that LV Feng has already torn its body into pieces by now. Are you done?" Kale looked at him coldly. Just as he stood up, he staggered and almost fell back down. Fortunately, Lorna reached out to support him in time. "Boss, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with that drink?" Lorna's expression changed slightly as she looked at the empty cup with a few drops of yellow liquid left on the table. "Correct answer, but unfortunately there's no reward. I've put a large enough dose of paralyzing venom in that drink. Even a god wouldn't be able to move once the venom takes effect." Leo held the money in his hand and looked at Kale and Lorna as if he was looking at prey that had fallen into a trap. He smiled nastily and said, "Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll sell you to others as human slaves. I'll also visit the middleman on your behalf. This is the first lesson I'm teaching you outsiders. No matter where you are, the strong prey on the weak and the strong are respected." Chapter 381. Lorna supported the swaying Kale and looked at the ugly Captain Leo and the alien guards surrounding them with laser guns. She couldn't help but say in disgust, "I thought the Milky Way Alliance was some high-tech civilization. I didn't expect it to be 100 times darker and dirtier than the underground world on Earth. This human lady, what do you know?" Leo smiled and looked down at the money in his hand. His eyes were filled with obsession and fanaticism. He laughed and said, "No matter what alien race it is, when a technological civilization develops to the end, the ultimate pursuit is resources. Resources are the needs of life. Some races are even willing to give up their home for resources and step into outer space, which is full of death and danger. There are even some races that can launch an interstellar war that covers an area of more than 10 light-years just for a planet rich in resources. The Milky Way Alliance is indeed the largest and most prosperous civilization galaxy. But because of this, our demand for resources has reached an exaggerated level." Leo put away the money without any guilt. He said matter-of-factly, "Plus, we are interstellar hunters. Plundering resources in outer space is a normal thing." Behind the magnificent civilization, there was a bottomless darkness with an extremely high degree of bloodshed. This was the current situation of the Milky Way Alliance. The closer it was to the end of civilization, the more ancient the laws would be. Lorna was silent for a while. Her expectations of the Milky Way Alliance, the peaceful coexistence of advanced technology and alien races, were completely shattered. Kale shook his head and said to himself, "The end of development and evolution is no longer beauty and peace, but a serious lack of resources. This is really comical." A name suddenly flashed across his mind. Thanos. "Okay, I've said enough. Guards, capture the 2 of them." Leo waved his hand and a few alien guards immediately stepped forward. They took out devices that looked like the upgraded version of shackles and were about to bind the poison Kale and the weak Lorna. Boom, 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 boom. At this moment, outside of the reception room, the sound of intense and powerful explosions could be heard faintly through the thick steel plate protective door. Even the floor of the interstellar spaceship started to shake. "What's going on?" Leo's expression changed. There was clearly an exchange of fire outside the door. Kale laughed and said, "Captain, you didn't think that my iron bodyguard would be so easily taken care of by your men, did you?" Lorna also smiled. These arrogant aliens knew nothing about the power of the Iron Man suit created by Tani, the genius engineer recognized by Earth. "You outsiders deserve to die. There's no need to hold them captive, just shoot them dead." Leo quickly took a few steps back and ordered sternly, More than 20 extraterrestrial guards raised their laser guns and quickly aimed and pulled the trigger. Rays of scorching white laser beams formed a glaring and terrifying rain of light, bursting out from all directions and densely covering Kale and his companion. Just in time. Kale suddenly pulled Lorna's arm and had her fall into his embrace. He didn't look like he had been poisoned at all. His fists, which had been tightly clenched, opened up. Whoosh! It was as if an engine switch had been lit somewhere in his body. In an instant, a dazzling red and white energy surged out of his body, gushing out from Kyle's arms and fists. It flowed at the speed of light into a semicircle of an energy shield, enveloping Kyle and Lorna's body. The white laser rain fell on the energy shield, but it didn't show any signs of breaking. Instead, it was unbelievably melting and shattering. How is this possible? Leo's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't understand how the human in front of him had done it. The extraterrestrial guards' attacks didn't stop. Wave after wave of laser beams continuously bombarded the exterior of the energy shield. Kale held his breath, his fists trembling slightly. When he realized that the fused energy was still unstable and couldn't maintain the defensive energy shield for too long, he simply let go of the condensed energy in his fists and took the initiative to detonate the fused energy that overflowed outwards. Bang! The energy shield instantly collapsed, turning into a surging tide of light that violently slammed into the surroundings. Leo turned around and ran, but after taking a few steps, he felt a light shuttle hit his back. He somersaulted violently and flew out without any suspense, just like the other extraterrestrial guards around him. A group of extraterrestrials crashed into the inner wall of the spaceship one after another. Guns scattered all over the ground. The scene was rather spectacular and inexplicably hilarious. Kale put down his hands. The violent fused energy was still flowing around his body in dazzling colors, making him look like a pay-to-win player in a game who had countless buffs stacked on top of each other. "Boss, you're too strong." Lorna was still lying on Kale's chest. Her heart was beating rapidly, and her beautiful eyes were filled with dazzling colors. Her lips were slightly opened, and she was saying terrible words that could easily be misunderstood. The actual combat effect of the fused energy was also beyond Kale's expectations. He glanced at the wailing extraterrestrial guards on the ground. The fused energy had clearly penetrated their protective suits and hurt them internally. Kale finally understood why Tani didn't want to spar with him anymore. "Why are you still lying down? Continue fighting." Leo got up from the corner with difficulty, wiped the green blood from the corner of his mouth, and pulled out a pitch-black handle from his waist. After pressing the button, a buzzing sword-shaped beam of light immediately appeared. Hearing this, many extraterrestrial guards supported each other and got up. They either picked up their laser guns or took out their lightsabers, facing Kale and Lorna in a battle formation. Quite tenacious. Kale narrowed his eyes slightly. A human would probably have to lie in bed for a month or two after taking that hit. Kale thought for a moment, then suddenly took out a creature card and patted it on Lorna's back. "Venom, protect Lorna for me." "Yes." Venom left its card form and returned to its original black liquid form. It stuck to Lorna's back and quickly covered her limbs and head, forming a dark and tough keratin membrane. "I'm not that weak." Lorna curled her lips. She knew that Kale was thinking for her. After all, no matter how strong her mutated ability was, the fragile human body was still a major weakness. She would probably die on the spot if she was hit by a laser beam. In just a short while, Lorna transformed into a tall and slender dark humanoid monster, forming a stark contrast with Kale, who had a colorful halo of fusion energy. Both of them exuded a dangerous and terrifying aura. "Go." Kale and Lorna moved, each turning into two streams of light, one colored and one black. They charged violently at the group of extraterrestrial guards with horrified expressions, like wolves entering a flock of sheep. Leo moved with his back against the wall. Looking at the one-sided battle, he panicked and turned on the holographic communicator on his wrist. "LV phone, bring the guards to the reception room for support." The communication was quickly connected, and LV Feng's pale face was projected on the screen. He was being chased by the golden-red flying Iron Man. While dodging the laser beams, he screamed at Leo, "Captain, I need support here too." Chapter 382. In the boundless darkness of outer space. The interstellar spaceship was traveling at high speed, as if it was returning to a certain planet. Two light and agile small space warships were guarding the left and right sides of the spaceship. Suddenly, the interstellar spaceship trembled slightly, and its huge engine was extinguished. It lost its power and stopped near an asteroid belt. The two space warship pilots were shocked. Since they didn't receive the change of course in advance, they could only stop the warship in a hurry and operate the communication system to try to contact the interstellar spaceship. They were surprised by the interstellar spaceship's stop. After all, they had followed Leo for decades and understood the captain's style and habits very well. Interstellar hunters were all madmen who walked on the edge of a knife. What they were most afraid of was kicking an iron plate and making a mistake. Leo was a careful person. He organized his space pirate group to wander in outer space. When he encountered a civilization with protection or a strong spaceship, he would choose to take a detour to avoid them and specifically target those spaceships and space warships that were alone to hunt. Once the hunt was successful, the interstellar spaceship would immediately stop committing crimes and hide in some remote planets. After a period of time, they would go out and target other targets. Leo could be said to be the typical representative of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. However, the space pirate group he owned was not considered the best in the Milky Way alliance. Choosing this method had allowed him to not fail in the past few decades. Could it be that a veteran bandit group like theirs had finally fallen today? Before the alien pilots could figure it out, they saw the interstellar spaceship suddenly activate its laser cannons and aim the cannons at their space warships. No. Following a series of desperate screams, the laser cannons shot out several laser light pillars that swept across space, mercilessly piercing through the space warships that were escorting them. The space warships exploded into balls of fire and gradually disintegrated into nothingness in the vast universe. Until their deaths, they still couldn't understand what happened to the interstellar spaceship. At this time, inside the interstellar spaceship, the smooth metal corridor was a mess. It seemed to have been through the cruel baptism of battle. At a glance, the corpses of the alien guards were strewn all over the place. Their heads were violently twisted, their bodies were fatally injured by lasers, or their muscles were mostly melted by some kind of energy. The floor, walls, and ceiling all had burn marks from the laser cannons. In front of the main cockpit, this was the last area where the battle came to an end. In front of the door there was a small mountain of alien guard corpses. Green blood flowed all over the ground, emitting a disgusting stench. Inside, Kale sat calmly in the captain's seat. His spacesuit and boots were spotless. If it weren't for the sweat on his forehead, he wouldn't look like he had just gone through a fierce battle. Beep, beep. Tani took off his mask, and with the help of Vice and Jarvis, he operated the starship's control panel. After confirming that the fighter jet was destroyed, he turned around and said, "Godfather, the two space warships outside have been taken care of." "Very good." Kale nodded, his face expressionless. Captain Leo and the captain of the guards, LV Fong, knelt on the ground with wounds all over their bodies. Their wrists were bound by a twisted steel pipe, and when they heard Tani's words, they showed even more despair. At this moment, a black shadow flashed past the door. As the venom-covered cuticle faded, Lorna's beautiful body was revealed. She clapped her hands and walked toward Kale as if she was asking for credit. "Boss, it's all cleaned up. Compared to mutated abilities, close combat is much more enjoyable. You're wasting your talent ability." Kale rolled his eyes. If it was any other mutated ability it would be fine, but this was magnetic field control, which was equivalent to a god's chosen skill. Although Lorna's body was still a big weakness, as long as she could perfectly control the magnetic field, not to mention a rain of bullets, even intercontinental missiles, or even atomic bombs couldn't do anything to her. Magnetic field control could counter almost all technological creations. "Okay, of course I'll practice digging properly." Lorna stuck out her tongue. In front of Kale she was like an ordinary little girl. She obediently walked to his side and stood next to his chair, fiercely kicking the two aliens kneeling in front of her. Tani also walked down from the control panel and stood on the other side of Kale's chair with Lorna. Under the indifferent gaze of Kale and the other two, Leo and LV Fong trembled slightly and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to meet their eyes. In the Milky Way Alliance the combat value of humans was 5, which meant that they weren't dangerous at all. But today these 3 humans from Earth were all terrifyingly strong. They all transformed into Demon King monsters and casually killed all the armed guards of an interstellar spaceship. "Don't you have anything to say?" Kale said calmly. Leo raised his head and said with difficulty, "Mr. Kale, I think this is a misunderstanding, a very big misunderstanding." "Oh, misunderstanding?" Lorna smiled and reached out her hand. Accompanied by a green glow, a shiny blue Krypton coin suddenly flew out of Leo's pocket. She caught it in her hand and shook it gently. "What is this?" This. Leo's face was pale. He wanted to say something but stopped. Finally, he sighed and said dejectedly, I admit defeat. I can give you everything I have. I just hope you can let me go. That's what you said. Kale smiled, snapped his fingers and ordered, Venom go. Venom immediately stretched out a black tentacle from Lorna's body and circled around Leo's neck like a poisonous snake. The head of the tentacle transformed into a sharp needle and aimed at his temple. Leo's skin trembled slightly. He felt a chill at the back of his head. He looked at Kale in horror and said loudly, What are you going to do to me? Didn't you say that you can give me everything? Kale said calmly, Of course, that includes your memories and life. You demon! Leo was so scared that his entire body was trembling. He cursed out loud in fear, but before he could finish his sentence, his voice suddenly stopped in shock. It was Venom's black tentacle that pierced straight into Leo's temple and into his brain tissue. It began to forcibly search for beneficial memory information. 3 seconds later, Venom pulled back the tentacle and Leo collapsed to the ground. His eyes were wide open and white brain matter flowed out of his temple. Lorna nodded at Kale and said with a smile, Boss. Venom said that he has obtained detailed information about the location of the intermediary. What about his friend who has been to Earth? Kale asked. Lorna transmitted a message. Venom said, That person is also an interstellar hunter called Yondu. Leo himself is not very familiar with him. They just drank together. There are often disputes between interstellar hunters over resources. Yondu? Kale touched his chin. He had a faint sense of familiarity with this name. Chapter 383. Yondu, Star-Lord, Guardian of the Galaxy. This series of information flashed through Kale's mind, but he didn't trace it back too much. After all, his purpose was only to find Howard and others who had shown their traces in the Galaxy Alliance. There was no need to intervene in the affairs of the Guardian of the Galaxy. But then again, during World War II on Earth, to the 21st century, many aliens had come to Earth. Fortunately, they were not hostile, otherwise Earth would have ceased to exist long ago. Kale didn't think much about it, and his eyes fell back to the front, LV Fong, who was still kneeling beside Leo's body and shivering. LV Fong was on the verge of collapse at this time. In his view, the 3 human natives in front of him were clearly interstellar demons who ate people without spitting out their bones. We have got the information, boss, there is no need to keep this guy alive. Lorna crossed her arms over her chest, showing a very bright and charming smile. Yeah. Kale nodded calmly, stretched out his right hand forward and made a pistol gesture. The tip of his index finger was like a muzzle, condensing a bright and dazzling fusion energy. Fusion energy has the effect of light wave charging and high-temperature burning, and its penetrating and destructive power is far above ordinary laser energy. If hit by this fusion energy, the whole body will evaporate into nothingness on the spot. The light on Kale's fingertips became more and more dazzling, and just before it was about to be fired, LV Fong finally couldn't bear the fear of death, and his forehead slammed on the hard and smooth floor. Boom. LV Fong lay on the ground and wailed, Don't kill me, please don't kill me. I still have value to you, please believe me. Kale's eyes drooped, his right hand waved slightly, and the energy condensed on his fingertips dissipated. He looked down at LV Fong indifferently. I will give you a chance. Tell me, what else do you have? LV Fong hesitated for a moment and said, I am very familiar with the Galaxy Alliance, I can be a guide. From now on, I am your slave. As long as you don't kill me, I will be at your disposal. Do you think we are fools? Kale snorted coldly. I have already obtained enough information about the Milky Way Alliance from Leo. I don't need another slave like you who will betray us at any time. Lorna, who was standing at the side, played with her curly hair and suggested, Boss, why don't we let Venom absorb his memories as well? This way the Milky Way Alliance's intelligence will be more comprehensive. This demoness. When Green Peak saw that Kale had really begun to consider, he could no longer hold it in and hurriedly said, Actually, I'm not just Leo's trusted aide. I have a second hidden identity. What identity? Kale asked. Green Peak clenched his teeth and said in frustration, Luo Nan. I'm Luo Nan's man. Luo Nan? Kale was familiar with this name. Leo had mentioned it just now. Ronan was the leader of the Kree people. Recently, he had frequently targeted the Nova Empire. It seemed that he wanted to start a war in the Milky Way Alliance. Luo Nan will definitely kill me. Green Peak let out a long sigh. In order to survive, he continued, 10 years ago, I was Luo Nan's subordinate. I accepted the mission he issued and lurked in Leo's interstellar hunter core. Tani asked in astonishment, does Leo have any important identity? Why does Luonan need to find someone to look after him? Green Peak shook his head and said, no. Leo doesn't have any special identity. Luonan specially cultivated a group of elite spies and placed them in a few well-known interstellar hunter corps. He made the interstellar hunters, who didn't belong to any civilization, become his chess pieces and sources of information. Luonan probably planned to start a war long ago by doing this, right? Kale hit the nail on the head. I won't hide it from everyone. In fact, decades ago the Nova Empire and the Kree people were hostile forces. It was only later that they signed a peace agreement. Green Peak said slowly, when Luonan was very young his parents were killed by the Nova Empire. So now, as the leader of the Kree people, he wants to start a war to completely destroy the Nova Empire. He paused and took a deep breath, and I know of Luonan's big secret. What secret? Lorna blinked her eyes. Green Peak said in a deep voice, Luonan is secretly cooperating with a leader of Titan Star. As long as Luonan offers up the power gem, the leader of Titan Star will help Luonan destroy the Nova Empire. Titan Star's a leader? Lorna and Tani were stunned. This Milky Way alliance really had a lot of messy matters. They didn't know how the leader of a civilization was involved. Only Kale's body trembled slightly. His shattered gold eyes flickered with a trace of light. Green Peak nodded and said with certainty, I've only heard of it. That Titan Star's leader seems to be called Mia. Enough. Kale interrupted Green Peak's words. His face was abnormally solemn. He clenched his fists tightly, and the fusion energy flowed out unstably. It was as if he thought of something very bad. Boss. Lorna and Tani became nervous. This was the first time they saw Kale reveal such a serious and gloomy expression. Kale nodded at them. His face relaxed a bit and he said in a deep voice, all right. The grudge between Nova Empire and the Kree has nothing to do with us. Our top priority is to find Howard and the others as soon as possible and return to Earth safely. Once that man was involved, things would become serious. With Kale's current strength, even if he couldn't beat Thanos, he was still quite confident in staying alive. However, this didn't mean that he wasn't afraid of the threat Thanos posed to Earth. A snap of the fingers could destroy half a life. This wasn't a joke. Kale looked at Green Peak and said coldly, since you've revealed Luonan's secret, I believe you know that there's no turning back. Green Peak nodded vigorously. He had already shown his loyalty. Kale waved his left hand and an item card was pulled out. It materialized into a metal electronic collar on the ground. This is a self-destruct collar. The remote control is in my hand. Press the button on the remote control or forcefully remove the collar, and it will detonate a bomb. The person wearing it will be blown into a headless corpse. Put it on. Green Peak hesitated. Under the threatening gazes of Lorna and Tani, he could only helplessly put the collar on himself. If we achieve our goal in the end, I will return you your freedom before we return to Earth. Kale narrowed his eyes. The best way to treat a slave was to beat them with a stick and then give them candy. As you command, Master. Green Peak was overjoyed. He quickly changed his words. Kale asked without any trace of politeness, which planet is suitable for us to go to? Nova Empire. Green Peak blurted out, Nova Empire is a flourishing planet in the Milky Way Alliance. It possesses a high level of technology and civilization. It's equivalent to the economic hub of the Alliance. Even outsiders with no status can freely enter and leave. Very good. Kale snapped his fingers and gave the order, immediately set off for Nova Empire. Chapter 384. New Star Empire, Extraterrestrial Freedom Square. Illuminated by the light that was even brighter and hotter than the sun, countless translucent, flat, egg-shaped buildings stood like a dense forest of steel. The surface of the buildings reflected the dazzling light, making the low Freedom Square in the middle look extremely spacious. In the open Freedom Square, music fountains and entertainment facilities were all available. Security robots patrolled in the air while sweeping robots were busy on the ground. This showed the tip of the iceberg of the local superior and advanced technology. The square was filled with people. Most of them were the local new stars. Their appearance was not much different from humans. They also walked on 2 feet, but the hair on their heads was like a feather crown, fluttering elegantly in the breeze. Those are the main race that lives in the New Star Empire civilization, New Stars. They are a cold-blooded humanoid race that evolved from the descendants of birds. Among the group of people strolling in the Freedom Square, Green Peak had completely entered the role of a guide. He humbly lowered his body and explained to Kale, who was the leader of the group beside him. Kale nodded and sighed in his heart. No matter what race it was, the final evolution trend was to be humanoid. After all, this was the Marvel Universe. The local news stars walked past Kale and the others. They glanced at them and quickly looked away as if nothing had happened. Lorna held onto Kyle's arm as she scanned the surroundings with her beautiful eyes. She was both surprised and astonished as she said, "Why don't they find it strange at all when they see us outsiders?" Miss Lorna, please take a look over there." Green Peak reached out and pointed to the left. Kale and the others looked over and saw a group of extraterrestrials walking out from the crowd of short news stars. The tall ones were more than 2 meters tall, their skin was as rough as stone. They were carrying giant maces and giant hammers and other cold weapons. When they walked, even the ground shook slightly. Many new stars had no choice but to dodge to the left and right. And there. Green Peak pointed to another place. There were a few short orcs that had not fully evolved into human form. They either had ears or a tail. They were running through the crowd and playing. The new stars were also used to this. How many extraterrestrials are there here? Lorna's eyes widened. She hadn't noticed it earlier, but now that she took a closer look, she realized that there were far more than just stone giants and orcs in the square. There were also many non-newbie alien creatures strolling around. Countless. Green Peak chuckled. The New Star Empire, as one of the 3 major alien empires of the Milky Way Alliance, although the New Star Empire is the majority, it is also the gathering place of countless alien races, cultures, and worlds. Therefore, even if you are an outsider, you will be accepted here without prejudice. Powerful national strength, freedom and equality, extremely advanced technology, supreme wisdom, this is truly a good place. Kale sighed softly. If Earth wanted to reach the level of a new star, it would probably take a very long time. However, if alien forces were to invade Earth, the Black Panther Nation would implement external development, and the Norse gods would migrate to the solar system. Earth's civilization would undergo an explosive evolution. Where did Tani go? Lorna looked around and suddenly realized that Tani had disappeared. There were only 3 people left in the team, including her. When he got off the Eagle fighter, he said that he wanted to understand the technology of this planet, so he flew away in his battle suit. Anyway, we have a translation machine and a communicator. When we find the information here, we'll contact him. Kyle couldn't help but smile when he said this. Stark and his son were the same kind of people. Thinking back, when they were in the Black Panther Kingdom, Howard was also obsessed with advanced technology and got separated from him. He even broke into the Black Panther King's challenge ceremony. Bang! At this moment, along with a loud commotion in an area not far from Kyle and the others, there seemed to be a dispute between 2 creatures, scaring many of the Nova's people and causing them to flee, quickly clearing out an empty space for them. What's wrong? Lorna stood on her tiptoes and looked over curiously. Unfortunately, she was still a distance away and couldn't see clearly. Master, Miss Lorna, it's best if we don't pay attention to it. Green Peak was an experienced person, so he quickly gave a suggestion. Due to the large number of races in the Nova Empire, conflicts and disputes are common. However, most of them are caused by new outsiders. If you cause trouble in the Nova Empire, the consequences will be very tragic. Then don't worry about it. Let's go find the mediator first. Kale replied coldly. He had just taken a few steps when suddenly, a scream came from the dispute area, causing him to stop abruptly. What's wrong, boss? Lorna looked at Kale in confusion. I think I've heard this voice somewhere before. Kale frowned and turned his gaze to the dispute area that was full of human walls. There was someone he knew in this new star empire far away from Earth? At this moment in the dispute area, the 3 stone giants surrounded each other like 3 small mountains. They coldly stared down at the little guy who was surrounded by them. That little guy seemed to be the amalgamation of a bear and a rat, only the size of 2 palms. His ears and tail drooped as he laid on the ground, trembling all over. He repeatedly wailed, I was wrong, I was really wrong, 3 stone men, big brothers. It hugged its injured leg, the blood that seeped out slowly dyed its white fur red. You want to steal our things? Are you tired of living? One of the stone giants snorted. I'm hungry, the white bear weakly explained. Hungry? Speaking of hungry, I'm also quite hungry right now. The stone giant looked at the white bear and licked its dry and rough lips. If we don't teach it a lesson, it'll think us 3 brothers are easy to bully. Be gentle, don't smash it into meat paste. It's hard to deal with. I'll do it. The three stone giants obviously still thought that this was their home planet and ignored the rules of New Star Empire. After a cold-blooded discussion, one of the stone giants rolled up his sleeves and walked out. He raised his mace high and smashed it down under the white bear's desperate expression and the surrounding New Star Empire people's exclamations. In a flash, a colorful stream of light flashed across the field and went straight between the stone giant and the white bear. Fast. The speed of light was too fast. It was so fast that the audience thought they were seeing things. They blinked and saw a silver-haired young man standing in the middle of the field. His left hand was blocking the bottom of the mace, and his back was facing the stone golem. His right hand was lifting White Bear from the ground. The stone giant's eyes were wide open. Its palm held the handle tightly and poured all its strength into the mace. However, no matter how much its arm muscles trembled, the mace could not be lowered even a little bit. How is this possible? The other two stone people were also shocked. It should be known that the stone people were one of the strongest fighting races in the Milky Way Alliance. The silver-haired young man casually held the mace and ignored the stone giants. Instead he smiled at the white bear. "Hi, long time no see. You are." The white bear was extremely weak. It struggled to open its eyes. The moment it recognized the silver-haired young man, it could no longer hold back its tears and sobbed. "Kale, I missed you so much." Chapter 385. Kale, I missed you so much. I really missed you to death. You suddenly left Sokka Star and didn't even take me with you. Are we still friends? It's been 5 years. I thought I would never see you again. Woo! Looking at the little white bear crying in his hand, Kyle's mouth curved into a smile. He didn't think that he would actually run into an old friend in Xing Xing. That's right. The one he saved was the genetically modified creature he met on Sokka Planet, his guide and subordinate, Bai Bo. However, at this time the injured and weak Bai Bo looked a lot worse. His body size was a third larger than when he was on Sokka Planet, but his figure was much thinner. His white hair was dispirited and dirty, and his broken leg was still dripping with blood. Kale, it's really you? Am I dreaming? Cough cough. Bai Bo's breathing was weak. He coughed violently and spat out blood and internal organs. Obviously, the stone man didn't hold back in his attack. Of course it's me, Bai Bo. I told you on Sokka Planet that as long as you follow me, I'll make sure you'll be safe. Kale showed a rare gentle smile and said confidently, "Since I'm here, you'll be fine." I remember. Bai Bo endured the pain and forced a smile, revealing a row of white teeth. Then he closed his eyes and fainted. Leave it to me. Kale nodded and turned around calmly. He looked at the stone man in front of him and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Who are you? Do you want to stand up for that little rat? The stone golem stomped on him and roared. It held the mace with both hands instead of one. Its muscles bulged as it exerted all its strength, wanting to use the mace to crush Kyle and Bai Bo into meat paste. Haven't you heard of this saying? You have to look at the owner before beating a dog. Kale sneered. He suddenly put more strength into his hand. The mace he was holding seemed to be made of plastic. It immediately caved in, leaving shocking finger marks. BZZT BZZT. Qi Xian's fused energy burst out, twining around Kale's fingertips and spreading outwards. The mace was corroded and evaporated at a speed visible to the naked eye. This. Stone Golem was shocked. He quickly let go of the handle and watched as his steel mace turned into a small pile of scrap metal. Big brother, don't be afraid. Let us help. The other two stone golems thought that since it was 3 against 1, there was no reason for them to be afraid of retreating. Thus they took a step forward. The 3 stone golems were like the walls of a fortress, casting a shadow that covered a large area around Kale. Kale's face was as calm as ever. To him, there was not much difference between 1 stone golem and 3 stone golems. When the difference in combat strength was too great, it would be like an ant to an elephant. There was no threat at all. Kale's eyes were filled with endless coldness. He threw the scrap metal aside and slowly opened his left palm towards the 3 stone golems. Like the palm engine of Tani's Mark battle suit, his palm condensed dazzling and scorching energy. The cold killing intent that was almost tangible, and the oppressive aura of a high-dimensional evolved life form rose steadily. Kale was really angry. He did not want to hide his strength anymore. He directly used the strongest and most effective method to send these small fries to hell. The 3 stone golems originally wanted to take the initiative to attack. However, in front of Kale at this moment, their 2 rows of teeth began to knock against each other, making crisp and terrifying sounds. Their whole body involuntarily showed signs of trembling. Their feet seemed to be filled with mercury and could not move. Fear. Fear that originated from the depths of their genes. The stone golem race was considered a famous fighting race in the Milky Way Alliance. Their rock-solid defense allowed their race to basically do whatever they wanted in the starry sky. But now they felt an innate fear that went deep into their genes from Kale, a human. How is this possible? Cold sweat seeped out from the foreheads of the 3 stone golems. In the Milky Way Alliance there was an ancient rumor. When a creature evolves to the extreme, its existence has the possibility of reaching supreme intelligence. Supreme intelligence was usually the founding elder and guardian of a huge civilization. They could abandon their bodies at will and transform into all forms of cognition. They had an endless lifespan like the galaxy. Their consciousness could peek into the mysteries of life and explore the truth of the universe. To the weak, supreme intelligence was the god of heaven. To the strong, supreme intelligence was the embodiment of fear. The stone golems had seen a supreme intelligence before, and from Kale, they actually felt an inconceivable fear that was almost the same. In the eyes of outsiders, the 3 stone golems seemed to be possessed. They stood motionless on the spot, still allowing the fusion energy accumulated in Kale's palm to become brighter and brighter. Green Peak suddenly pushed aside the human wall. When he saw Kale attacking the stone golems, he anxiously shouted, "Master, have mercy." Seeing that Kale did not respond, Green Peak persuaded Lorna, "Hurry and ask Master to stop. It will be too late if we delay any longer." Lorna shook her head and looked at the scene. No one can stop an angry boss. "Goodbye," Kale whispered. His palm was like a cannon, shooting out a dazzling beam of light. In an instant, the 3 stone golems' burly bodies were completely covered. The beam of light was too fast and too dazzling. The onlookers only saw the flash of light and subconsciously closed their eyes in shock. When they opened their eyes again, an extremely terrifying scene appeared in front of them. Pah! The 3 headless stone golems fell to the ground one after another. Their necks emitted a burnt smell and green smoke. Their heads were obviously directly blasted into pieces by the fusion energy. Someone died? Oh my god. Murder, he really killed them. The onlookers of the new Star City were instantly in an uproar. Following the continuous screams, countless people frantically fled the scene. Soon only the 3 headless stone golems, Kale, Bo, Lorna, and Green Peak's group were left. Kyle retracted his hand expressionlessly. Lorna quickly approached him and carefully hugged Bo, who was in his hand. Green Peak originally wanted to blend into the crowd and escape, but when he remembered that he still had a self-destruct device around his neck, he could not help but stomp his feet in frustration. He rubbed his hair with both hands and said anxiously, "Oh no, oh no." "Oh no. What's wrong?" Lorna looked at him and asked in surprise. Green Peak hurriedly said, "I should have told you guys earlier. The new Star City is indeed developing and pursuing freedom and equality, but we have to follow the local law and order. Causing conflict in the new Star City is already a serious crime, not to mention openly killing people. We will be arrested by the new Star City Army and sent to jail." As soon as he finished speaking, Kyle and Lorna sensed something and looked up. They saw that in the nearby sky, a dense group of fighter jets and aircraft had suddenly appeared. They quickly approached from afar and swarmed towards them in an overwhelming manner. At the same time, along with the shrill alarm on the ground, many colorful hover cars quickly arrived and surrounded the area where Kale and the others were. Chapter 386. In Freedom Square, where the crowd was scattered. It's over, it's over. We're completely done for." Green Peak looked at the sky around him and the flying machines that were as dense as locusts. He slapped his own head and realized that he could neither escape nor stay. He could only cry out in despair. "We're not scared yet. What are you yelling for?" Lorna glared at him. Green Peak's mouth twitched and he said with a sad face, "You don't understand. New Star's laws are extraordinarily strict. Just causing a dispute is enough to sentence you to death, not to mention killing a living thing without permission. We're now major criminals of New Star. Once we're caught, we'll be locked up in the strongest interstellar prison for the rest of our lives. I'd like to see what the New Star guards can do." Although Lorna said that, looking at the sky and the ground around her and the New Star army that was sweeping over like a disaster, she also knew the pros and cons of the situation. New Star was one of the top civilizations in the Milky Way Alliance. It had strong national strength and extremely advanced technology. Their armed forces were naturally not to be underestimated. Although she had the confidence and capital to be proud of her magnetic control, she definitely wouldn't dare to say that she could take on the forces of an alien civilization head-on. Lorna looked at Kale. "Boss, what should we do? Let's leave here first. There's no need to tangle with them." Kale was unbelievably calm, as if he didn't know how much trouble he had caused. Green Peak widened his eyes and groaned in disbelief. "Master, are you joking? How can we leave now? We've all been locked onto by New Star's satellites and New Star Army. With the flying speed of New Star's top technology, there's no chance of escaping at all. How would we know if we don't try?" Kale smiled faintly and called out, "Venom." Venom that was parasitic on him immediately extended a pair of dark wings with lightning patterns from his back. Seeing that the New Star Army was about to arrive, Kale didn't stay any longer. The dark cuticle quickly covered his entire body, and the muscles on his arms continued to expand and elongate, like a pair of giant claws shaped like an evil black dragon. Kale reached out with both hands, grabbing Lorna and Green Peak in each hand. His wings seemed to flap behind him gently, and as the hurricane howled, he turned into a streak of black light, rapidly breaking out of the plaza. The hovering vehicles that had rushed to the scene from the ground were a step too late. They stopped abruptly and surrounded the small empty space. The New Star guard who got down from the car looked at the horizon and saw Kale and the rest, who had become black dots in his vision. While he was shocked, he hurriedly opened the communication channel of the nearby New Star Army. "An emergency has occurred. The criminals know how to fly. I repeat, a group of criminals is escaping by flight. There are 4 of them in total. They are escaping at supersonic speed toward the east side of Freedom Square. Airspace Defense Forces, please intercept them immediately." "Understood. Team 1, prepare to launch a combined interception. The other teams, give chase. We can't let the criminal escape." Countless responses rang out, and the aircrafts that were gathering in Freedom Square all adjusted their course. Their engines roared as they sped up, chasing after Kale and the others who were breaking through the air. No matter what the situation on New Star was like inside New Star, the New Star Army was the absolute ruler. Over the past few decades, countless outsiders had caused trouble on New Star, but as long as the New Star Army arrived, the dispute would be declared over. And today at noon, this farce seemed to have just begun. In the sky above the bustling city of the New Star Empire, the aliens could see countless warcrafts and unmanned aircrafts of the New Star Army flying in the sky like a large dark cloud. They buzzed as they followed closely behind the dark Kale. The distance between the two was still rapidly closing. "While they're coming." Green Peak's waist was grabbed by Kale's left hand, as if he was suspended in midair. Due to the strong wind pressure, his 4 limbs drooped down and swayed wildly with the wind. As he wailed, even his saliva splashed all over himself. Lorna and Baibo were in a better state. Kale purposely enlarged his right hand, making it look like a black cocoon that wrapped around the two of them, allowing them to avoid the wind pressure and suffocation they would feel when flying at supersonic speed. Hearing the dense engine sounds behind him, Kale didn't say a word and turned back slightly. The New Star Army's warcrafts were still accelerating, and in less than half a second, the distance between them had shrunk from 100 meters to 10 meters. 2 space warcrafts approached Kale from both sides and aimed at him. The equipped loudspeaker sounded an alarm. "For criminals, please take note. You've violated Article 51 of the New Star Law, suspected of killing a living being, and Article 120 of the New Star Law, illegal escape. Please land on the ground immediately and surrender without a fight. Or else." "I'll repeat it again." Without waiting for the loudspeaker to say anything, Kale's dark wings flapped, leaving circles of white airwaves in the air. His flying speed increased by another level, reaching a terrifying pseudo-light speed, pulling away from the New Star Army's aircrafts once again. "Wah wah wah." Green Peak allowed the airflow to hit him, and his cries became even more heart-wrenching. Flying at pseudo-light speed on Earth, even the most advanced rocket with the greatest firepower couldn't catch up. However, in New Star, flying at pseudo-light speed was only the basic standard of flying, and technology had long surpassed it. In just a short while, the New Star Army's aircrafts approached Kale's side again, and the loudspeaker sounded a warning. "This is the last warning from New Star. If you don't land immediately, the Army will use force on the criminals." Kale still didn't have the intention to respond, and he continued to fly at the limit of his dark wings. In the next moment, he suddenly frowned slightly, flapped his wings, and rose up abruptly. A few laser beams brushed past him. "Please land immediately." The warning from the Army's loudspeaker was like a shadow. At the same time, A few of the aircrafts that were the closest to him shot out linear light arcs, connecting them to form an orange net. As their flying speed increased, the giant light net was like a hunting prey, enveloping Kale's back. "It's over." Green Peak rolled his eyes and tilted his head back. Seeing this scene, he revealed a tragic expression of relief. "It's over? It's only just begun." Kale smiled and suddenly took a deep breath. A glaring light appeared on his golden shattering eyes, as if he had turned on the main switch, and a powerful force started to awaken in his body. Zzz. The dazzling fusion energy was like a strong electric arc, surging from Kale's chest and increasing on the surface of his body like a buff halo. At this moment, Kale had completely turned into a dazzling stream of light, so fast that before the airflow and wind pressure became chaotic, he had already left them far behind. The giant light net was originally only 5 meters away and was about to catch up to Kyle. However, the moment the fusion energy appeared, the giant light net, the space warship, and even the laser beams from the cannons blurred and retreated at an extremely fast speed. The critical point of light speed was easily crossed, and then it continued to increase endlessly. The extraterrestrial pilots of the New Star Army's aircrafts looked out of the windshield at the criminal who they could only see a trace of tail flame, and they were all stunned like statues. Chapter 387. They stared at Kale and the others who were about to disappear into the horizon, bathing in the dazzling light energy and dragging a long and straight trail in the sky. While the pursuing New Star Corps were dumbfounded, the guards piloting the warships looked at the display in disbelief. They didn't see wrongly. The warship they were piloting had already activated its maximum engine horsepower, and its flying speed had even reached the critical point of light speed. But what made them feel hopeless was that the other party's speed was far above theirs. The space warships that originally had the advantage in speed could only watch as Kale and the others widened the distance between them. Was the criminal really going to escape? And it was under the situation where the New Star Corps, who specialized in air control, was mobilized? The arrogant alien guards of the New Star Corps naturally couldn't accept this fact, but the distance between the two parties continued to widen. They could only bite the bullet and continue to chase after them. Air Control Team, has the criminal been successfully intercepted? The ground troops saw that the New Star Corps' warships in the sky didn't respond for a long time, so they connected to the communication channel to inquire. In the end, the channel fell into silence because there was no response from the guards. The New Star Corps' air control team and the piloting guards collectively shut themselves up. They were so depressed that they couldn't speak. How should they answer? Could it be that the criminals' escape speed was faster than their New Star's most advanced warships? No one in the New Star Corps would dare to believe this. At this time, someone needed to stand up. The captain of the air control team coldly ordered on the voice channel, "Continue to chase, we can't let the criminal escape. Gamble on the dignity of our New Star Corps that has dominated the Milky Way Alliance for hundreds of years." Yes. The air control team pulled themselves together and responded, but reality was cruel. No matter how much they used the engine horsepower to chase, they couldn't even see the criminal's tail flames. Only the satellite surveillance screen still showed the target's cursor, and the distance between them was increasing by a few kilometers per second. They could only continue to chase even if they couldn't catch up. Suddenly, a team forcefully connected to the channel. The captain of the team said calmly, "Just returned from patrolling outside the planet. Are you chasing after the criminal? Do you need our sanctions team's help?" It was the sanctions team of the New Star Corps. The air control team chasing after Kale and the others was overjoyed, as if they had seen their savior. The New Star Corps had a clear division of labor. There were ground troops for internal security, air control troops, and sanctions team for external battles and defense. The sanctions force was the strongest army of the Nova Empire, the first and last line of defense. According to common sense, it was unprecedented for the sanctions team to participate in the arrest of criminals. It was like making a mountain out of a molehill. But at this moment, the New Star Army couldn't care so much. Letting the criminals escape in front of them was the greatest shame that the New Star Empire would never be able to wash off. "Sanctions team, what's your general location?" Very quickly, a guard from the air control team asked excitedly. "About 100 kilometers in front of you," the sanctions team quickly replied. "That's great." The guards of the air control troop were invigorated, as if they had just returned to heaven from hell. They said excitedly, "We will continue the pursuit. The criminal is heading your way. Please intercept him now. Attention, the opponent's movement speed is above the maximum flying speed of our fighter. Please intercept him on the spot." Understood. 100 miles away. Thousands of fighter jets from the Sanctions team floated in the air. The fighter jets were all made from the same mold. Their bodies were a cold metallic grayish-silver color. They all opened their wings and reflected the strong golden light. Like a well-trained and agile swarm of bees, they began to adjust their hovering positions row by row, from the top of the sky all the way down to the surface of the plains. Whoosh, Kale's body glowed with fused energy. He brought Lorna and the others and flew across the sky like a meteor. Wah wah wah, Green Peak was already unconscious. He was at the tip of the strong wind. He would sometimes faint and sometimes wake up. He kept switching between these two states. Kale turned around and looked behind him. The new star core that was originally following them had already disappeared. He then said to Vice, who had transformed into an electronic pendant, "It's about time. Vice, help me block the satellite signal. I need to find a place below to completely get rid of the tail behind us." Vice immediately replied, "Okay. Wait, Master. There are local guard fighter jets in front. The number is very exaggerated. There are many more than the fighter jets that are chasing us." "There are more in front?" Kyle narrowed his eyes and kept flying at top speed. He raised his head and looked ahead. At the end of his line of sight, he saw a huge golden arc net of light appear in a flash of golden light. Previously, the hunting light net formed by 3 or 4 fighter jets from the new star core was enough to wrap around a medium-sized fighter jet. But now hundreds and thousands of fighter jets were connected. The light net formed was like a huge wall that connected the sky and the earth. The light net not only sealed the sky and the ground, but it also extended to both sides. There was almost no end to it. Green Peak opened his eyes in a daze. He saw the light wall in front of him from the corner of his eyes and woke up. He said in shock, "That is the special interception and defense function of the new star core. Looking at this situation, I'm afraid that 1,000 fighter jets are connected together. They share the engine and energy. Not to mention a normal interstellar spaceship. Even the strongest spaceship in the Milky Way Alliance can easily stop it. They have blocked our path in advance. No matter how fast we are, it is meaningless." After Green Peak finished speaking, his head tilted again and he fainted again. Kale's face was calm. He looked at the golden light net that was getting closer and closer. He had no intention of slowing down. Instead, he used all his strength to extract and fuse the energy, allowing more energy to gather on the surface of his body. "Hurry up, hurry up!" Kale shouted in his heart. The dazzling light overflowed. The tail flame was already 10 meters long. His body was so bright that it looked like he was burning. He was trying his best to squeeze out the hidden energy potential in his body. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 100 meters. The closer he got to the light net formed by 1,000 fighter jets, the faster Kale's speed was still increasing. Comparing the two, it was like a moth flying into a flame. In the blink of an eye, the colorful stream of light crashed into the center of the huge net of light. The net of light slightly caved in, and the stream of light that Kyle belonged to became stuck as if it had sunk into a quagmire. Is it done? Just when the new star core collectively thought that they had finally stopped the criminal, a few fighter jets that were the cornerstone of the light net started to crack. The cracks quickly extended to the golden light net. Ping! The streamer simply tore a hole in the light net and pierced through it. Then, without slowing down, it flew towards the blue sky behind the light net. In the blink of an eye, it completely disappeared at the end of the sky. In the center of the tough and indestructible light net, a gap that was enlarged by a footprint was clearly presented on it. It was deeply imprinted in the minds of the new star core guards. With one step, it broke the absolute defense of the new star empire that was built with thousands of years of top-notch technology. Chapter 388. On this day, the people of New Star were surprised. They didn't know what happened on New Star, so the upper echelons ordered a temporary lockdown on New Star's entry and exit, and sent out the entire New Star core. For a moment, the sky and ground were filled with patrolling robots, and every armed alien guard was searching the planet's interior with red eyes. On the other side, somewhere in the outskirts of New Star Empire, an Eagle fighter was parked inside the dense forest, with its stealth mode activated. With the top technological creation Vice in charge, not to mention global satellites and aircraft scanning, even if they were close enough they wouldn't be able to detect it. Kale used the fusion energy to greatly increase his body's strength and flew at extreme speed. After breaking out of the new star core's encirclement, with the help of the AI Vice, he summoned the Eagle fighter and hid here, hiding from the chaos outside. Inside the Eagle fighter, Under Lorna's careful care, Bo's wounds were bandaged, and with a dose of fast-acting nutrition, his body quickly recovered and he woke up. On the bed in the lounge. Bo slowly got up, rubbed his beastly eyes with his claws, and looked around the unfamiliar interior of the fighter. When he saw Kale standing at the side, he suddenly jumped over. Lorna was shocked. She thought Bo was going to attack and was about to use her ability to stop him, but the next moment she was dumbfounded. Bo's claws tightly hugged Kale's thigh and he sobbed with tears and snot. "Kale. I'm not dreaming, I can't believe I can still meet you, this is great." It's okay. Kale didn't know whether to laugh or cry. When he was on planet Sokka, although Bo was timid and cautious, he still had a certain amount of combat power as a scavenger. He didn't expect that he would be reduced to a thief who didn't even have enough to eat in New Star. Kale was puzzled. He pulled Bo away from his thigh and put him back on the bed. He stared at him and asked directly, "Aren't you on planet Sokka, why are you here?" "It's a long story." Bo sighed and said emotionally, "You don't know. Back then, you fought to the end with the Demon King in the interstellar duel arena on planet Sokka, but you suddenly escaped on the Eagle Fighter, which caused an unprecedented sensation on planet Sokka." "And then?" Kale nodded. Given the situation at that time, escaping from Sokka Star was the best choice. The Grandmaster sent all his subordinates to capture you, but you flew into the wormhole vortex and completely disappeared. At this point, Bo's heart still trembled with lingering fear as he continued. His strongest subordinates, the Demon King and the guard captain, were killed and you, the victor, successfully escaped. The Grandmaster was naturally furious. He spared no effort to send people to investigate in detail, arresting all the people on Sokka who had interacted with you. Me, Only and her brother are included. Then how did you escape? Kale was a little surprised. He knew the Grandmaster's temperament. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. After suffering such a big loss, he would definitely not let Bo and the others, who were on good terms with him, off the hook. "You don't know, but I was scared out of my wits at that time. I was locked in the same cage as Only and the others, and had to replace you in the duel arena in the next few days." Bo nagged again before patting his chest and slowly saying, "The day before the duel it was Yi. She secretly rescued us and arranged an interstellar spaceship for us. She let us drive the spaceship out through a wormhole." "Yi?" Kale showed a look of realization. Yi was the first person he met who had a rare purple ability card. As a hybrid of light elf and dark elf, her bloodline ability had not fully awakened at that time, so she could not draw it, and he did not know its specific ability and power. If there was anyone on planet Sokka who could rescue Bo and the others from the Grandmaster's hands, only Yi had this ability. "Is Yi also on Nova?" In response to Kale's question, Bo shook his head dejectedly and answered, "At that time the Grandmaster's subordinates were chasing after us. Yi and I were separated into two spaceships. In order to buy time for us to escape, Yi deliberately led the pursuers away. Later we successfully passed through the wormhole vortex and moved to the Milky Way Alliance's area." "I see." Kale nodded, looked at Bo's dark and weathered fur and said in surprise, "Then you are now so pathetic, right?" Bo finished his sentence and said with tears in his eyes, "Although we escaped from planet Sokka, when we came to the Milky Way Alliance, we were unfamiliar with the place and people. Originally we wanted to find a peaceful and stable civilized planet to live, but who knew that we would be so unlucky as to run into the Interstellar Hunter group. Only and I were robbed of all our belongings, including the spaceship we were driving, and we were sold to human traffickers as slaves. I went through a near-death experience before escaping from an interstellar slaughterhouse." Kale was speechless. It seemed that Bo's experience could only be described with the word miserable. Ever since he left him, he had experienced a life of suffering. No wonder he cried and screamed every time he saw him, wanting to hug his thigh. "Then do you know where Only and her brother were sold to?" Kale thought that since they were implicated by him, if he knew their location, he might as well rescue them if he had the ability. "I don't know. We were sold separately. They were much more valuable than me, so they should have been sold to some high-end extraterrestrial customers." Bo was unusually depressed. He was still brooding over the fact that he was classified as an edible creature. "Boss, he looks quite pitiful. Why don't we take him in?" Lorna blinked and shook Kale's arm affectionately. Kale nodded and said to Bo, "Then you can come back with me." "Okay. I will definitely become a sharp weapon in Mr. Kale's hands. I have confidence." Bo excitedly clenched his claws and said with determination, "No need, you can just be a mascot that shouts, 'Nice.'" Kale laughed in his heart. At this moment, someone suddenly knocked on the door of the lounge. After he ordered Vice to open the door, Green Peak walked in humbly with his back bent. "Master, about the intermediary." Green Peak hadn't even finished speaking when Baibo suddenly jumped up and quickly hid behind Kyle. Trembling, he stuck his head out to look at Green Peak and cried out in horror, "Why are you here?" Green Peak also recognized Baibo. He looked very awkward and hesitated to speak. Seeing this, Kale understood and said, "Baibo, don't tell me the person you were talking about is the Interstellar Hunter group that Green Peak is in?" "That's right. It's him. I would recognize him even if he turned into ashes." Baibo's hair stood on end as he stared at Green Peak fiercely. "Brother Baibo, this is a misunderstanding. Listen to me." Green Peak said embarrassedly, "I was just following Captain Leo's orders. I really didn't mean to capture you guys." "You bastard." Baibo clenched his teeth and rolled up his sleeves as if he was about to fight. Lorna reached out and hugged Baibo. She comforted him and said, "All right, that Interstellar Hunter group has been wiped out by us. Green Peak is also a slave. Tell me what happened with the intermediary?" Kale looked at Green Peak and asked coldly. After experiencing what happened in the afternoon, Green Peak was even more convinced of Kyle's abilities. He tried to flatter Kyle. "The middleman of New Star Army knows about your great achievements in the New Star Army and wishes to meet you. The time is tonight, and the location is up to you." Chapter 389. New Star at Night. 2 crescent moons hung high in the dark blue night sky. The bustling steel cities all over the planet were brightly lit, competing with the natural bright moonlight in the sky. This was the planet that never sleeps, built on top of the Milky Way Alliance's technological civilization. When the strangely shaped alien residents began their nightlife, the New Star Corps inevitably concentrated their defense outside the planet. A colorful hover car drove into the new city from the suburbs, passed through a series of security checks, and finally arrived at a relatively remote alien bar. "Sir, you've arrived." The hover car driver got off, politely opened the door, bowed his head and made a pleased gesture. First, a pair of black boots stretched out, and then a young, thin, black-haired man walked out from the back seat. He nodded slightly at the dwarf-like alien driver and threw out a small bag of Milky Way Alliance currency. The alien driver hurriedly caught it, weighed it in his hand and suddenly smiled and thanked him again and again. After the alien driver drove the hover car away, the black-haired man looked up at the bar's signboard, reached out and pressed the doorbell next to the closed door. A camera in the corner of the building was activated, and the flashing red lens was aimed at the young man's face. "Outsider, please state your identity and purpose." A hoarse and low voice sounded. The black-haired man frowned slightly, and did not make any unnecessary movements. He only used 2 fingers to snap his fingers, and a ray of dazzling light instantly shot out from his fingertips, quickly and violently bursting into the camera in the corner. In this new star empire, there seemed to be nothing more representative of one's identity than the fusion of energy. Boom. The camera exploded and electric arcs shot out in all directions. Flames splashed out, leaving only a burn mark in the corner of the original wall. Beep beep. At the same time, the closed electronic door of the bar suddenly opened. The black-haired man did not hesitate and directly stepped in. After passing through the threshold, the thick electronic door automatically closed again. The ceiling and walls of the originally dark room suddenly lit up. There was a ballroom, guest tables and chairs, a bar counter, a bartender rack and so on. Everything that a bar needed was available. However, it was cold and empty inside. There was only a white-haired middle-aged man in a gentleman's uniform standing at the bar counter. He was even mixing a colorful drink in his hand. "You are the intermediary on Nova?" The black-haired youth looked at the only person in the room and continued to walk forward. In the last few steps, he removed the venom camouflage on his body. His black hair turned silver-white, and his pupils regained their radiant golden color. Even his physique swelled up and became taller and stronger. To be more precise, it's one of Nova's intermediaries, Albert. New Star is one of the top civilizations in the Milky Way Alliance. Including me, there are more than 5 underground intermediaries. The bartender smiled and looked at the approaching Kale, exclaiming in admiration, "I didn't expect that you would actually choose to come to my main territory alone. You are indeed worthy of being able to escape from the encirclement of the New Star Corps. Just call me Kale." Kale casually sat on a chair, picked up a glass of wine, and took a sip as if quenching his thirst. After letting the taste blossom on the tip of his tongue, he praised, "Your bartending skills are not bad. Not only my bartending skills are not bad. Albert laughed and said, Mr. Kale, you should have just arrived in the Milky Way Alliance not long ago. After entering the Alliance area, you met Leo's interstellar hunters. It's a pity that Leo and his team have been roaming the Milky Way for decades. This time they are so unlucky to have robbed a strong person that even the New Star Corps can't do anything to. Kale said calmly with a blank expression, How did you know? Did Green Peak tell you? He is now working under you, so naturally he wouldn't dare to speak casually. This is all my judgment based on the information in my hands. Albert spread out his hands and explained, Leo's interstellar hunters always like to pick outsiders to hunt, and a strong top character like you, Mr. Kale, had not left any records in the Milky Way Alliance's intelligence network. At noon you suddenly became famous because of the pursuit of the New Star Corps. Therefore, I concluded that you are an outsider who has just arrived in the Alliance. Well done. Kale smiled faintly. He was not worried that the other party was scheming. Instead, he was worried that the so-called middleman did not have enough information channels. Albert poured some wine for Kale and smiled. Mr. Kale, please don't be offended. I didn't specifically investigate you. You have already revealed your abilities at noon. Naturally, I also have to show off my intelligence network. Kale nodded as he cursed in his heart. He didn't believe that the other party didn't secretly investigate and judge the power of the fusion energy. However, it did not matter if the other party knew. After all, even Kale himself did not fully understand the birth and mystery of the fusion energy. Kale did not intend to beat around the bush. He looked at Albert and went straight to the point. I need to know the whereabouts of a few people. To buy information. Albert had a look of realization. He thought for a while and quickly replied, Why don't you tell me first? You need to find the names and characteristics of those people. What? Kale called out in a soft voice. He raised his left hand, and the electronic watch on his wrist projected a faint blue light, forming a three-dimensional screen in the cold air of the room. Howard, who looked like a gentleman with a mustache, Logan, who looked cool and wolf-like with a buzz cut, and Lucy, who had beautiful blonde hair. Their names and faces were displayed on the screen. Kale looked at the three extremely familiar faces on the screen, and his heart was filled with melancholy. They were his first employees, subordinates, and lovers. He had not seen them for several decades after the end of World War II on Earth. No matter what, he had to bring them back to Earth safely. This was one of the few wishes that Kale had left. Albert looked carefully at the screen, and his eyes paused on Howard for a while. He stroked his chin and asked, Can I only know the information of one of them? Yes. Even with Kale's tenacity, he could not suppress his emotions at this time. He clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, Whose whereabouts do you know? That person. Abbott pointed at Howard on the screen and said, I know someone who definitely has information on this human's whereabouts. That person once said that when he was repairing equipment on a planet, he met an old man who was very good at creating and modifying technological equipment. Who is that person? Kale could not help but ask. Seeing Albert's hesitant look, he instantly understood and took out a piece of corium from his pocket and placed it on the table. I'll use this to buy all the information you know about Howard. Very good, very good. Albert smiled and took the corium, revealing the greedy expression of a businessman. He looked at the corium and said in surprise, This energy crystal. Why is there blood on it? Don't worry, it's mine to begin with. It's just that the interstellar hunter Leo touched it before, Kale replied coldly. Albert took a deep breath and did not dare to delay and said anxiously, Deal. That person is called Quill, he calls himself Star-Lord, and he is also an interstellar hunter. He once saw the human named Howard on a certain planet. Chapter 390. Kale came out of the bar and looked up at the night sky. The last conversation with intermediary Abbott was still faintly echoing in his ears. If it was before, as long as there was enough bounty, Quill and other interstellar hunters would not only lead the way but also work for you. It's a pity that you're a few days late. Why, is that Star-Lord dead? No, but it's almost the same. A few days ago he was arrested by the New Star Corps because of a fight with 3 aliens in Freedom Square. They were accused of violating the security of the Empire, colluding with Ronin, and other crimes. They are now imprisoned in the Qian High Security Prison. Very good, as long as he is still alive, then everything is not a problem. Kale said calmly and turned to leave, and Abbott did not dissuade him. 4 intermediaries, they are simply collecting and buying information, as well as conveying information in the middle of bounty missions. They will not participate in risky things. Qian Prison, Star-Lord Quill. Kale murmured softly, and his eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. It's good to have clues after all. He is most afraid of being like a headless fly, wandering around in the huge Galaxy Alliance and staying there for a few years. If he can find Howard and the others, not to mention a mere interstellar prison, he will even break into the Titan sector. But before that, he still has to return to the Eagle fighter first, so as not to be out for too long and increase Lorna and others' worries. Thinking of this, Kale covered his body with venom and dark wings stretched out behind him. Like a huge bat that appears at night, he flapped his wings and rushed out of the city with the crescent moon hanging high in the sky. In the suburban forest, inside the Eagle fighter in stealth mode. When Kale returned smoothly, as soon as he walked into the cabin, Lorna, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, stepped forward and hugged his arm happily, leading him to the relatively spacious main cockpit. Kale walked into the cockpit and found that Tani had returned from his inspection. He was still wearing the Iron Man armor, took off his helmet, and sat on the chair with a tired face with his eyes closed. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Tani suddenly woke up. When he saw Kale, he jumped up from the chair with an expectant and nervous expression. He took a deep breath and asked, "Godfather, is there any news about Father and the others?" When Tani asked, in the cockpit including Green Peak and Bo, all looked at Kale subconsciously. Kale patted Tani's shoulder and then nodded with a smile. "That's great." Tony clenched his fist in excitement. He was already a middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s, but he was crying tears of joy like a child. "Is there really any news about Madame and the others?" Lorna opened her mouth, and an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. She could only hug Kyle's arm tightly. "Don't worry, it's just a clue." Kale calmed Tani down and told everyone the information he had obtained from the intermediary. That is to say, Quill, who was imprisoned in Keen Prison, had seen my father on a certain planet, and my father had helped him repair his equipment? Tony's eyes reddened as he thought about how it had been 20 years since they parted. The unruly young man from back then had now become a mature uncle with a beard. He didn't know if his father would still be able to recognize him. Manufacturing madmen like them dedicated their lives to science and technology. They seemed cold-blooded and heartless, but their hearts were scorching hot. For family and promises, they were more important than anything else. Keen Prison, I still know about this. Bo opened his mouth and said, "The prisoners captured by the New Star Army are all locked up in Chien. That is a floating prison constructed outside of New Star Army. It was transformed from a small planet into a floating prison. There are people from the New Star Army guarding it 24 hours a day." "That's right." Green Peak agreed. He paused and said, "But there is one thing that outsiders don't know. Keen Prison is located in a meteorite belt. There is a black hole nearby. The outer space environment is very bad. Plus, there are elite New Star Corps fighters guarding it. The prisoners inside have no chance of escaping. It is also very difficult for people outside to rescue them." Tani's expression changed. He said in a deep voice, "Godfather, speaking of the New Star Corps, we must be careful. In the afternoon, I specifically looked into the technological level of New Star. They have mastered the common technology that most alien races have, such as lightspeed starships, individual energy weapons, force fields, superluminal communication technology, and so on. On top of that, they have their own unique style of army fighter jets. The fighters of the New Star Corps can cleverly use force fields, energy, and combine to create a light net with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Because of this, no civilization in the Milky Way Alliance dares to be enemies with the New Star Corps. Once we meet them." As Tani spoke, he suddenly felt that the atmosphere in the room was not right. Kale did not speak. The others looked at him strangely. "What's wrong?" Tani asked in confusion. Lorna reminded him that, "Tani, you don't know, right? At noon we already came into contact with the fighters of the New Star Corps." "It can't be." Tani was a little confused. Not only that, Master also competed with the fighters of the New Star Corps in flying speed. He even kicked and broke the light net that they were so proud of. If Green Peak did not see it with his own eyes, he would not dare to believe that it was true even if he was beaten to death. That was the New Star Corps that dominated the starry sky. They could not do anything to Kale, who was carrying them. This was too exaggerated. If this spread out, it would undoubtedly cause a huge sensation in the Milky Way Alliance. "Okay, then pretend that I didn't say anything." Tani shrugged. The existence of Godfather, for him, could not be understood by common sense. After a detailed discussion, everyone put the decision-making power and eyes on Kale as the backbone. Kale pondered for a moment as if he knew Star-Lord and inexplicably said, Star-Lord is involved in too big a matter, and it should not be delayed. Green Peak, lead the way. We are now flying the fighter to Keem Prison. Half an hour later. In the vast space outside the new star, a few light-years away, on a star belt full of broken meteorites, there stood a black-gray steel fortress prison the size of an asteroid. From time to time, there were aircraft patrolling back and forth around it. The Eagle in stealth mode approached the side of the star belt and stopped far away, looking at the heavily defended prison fortress from a distance of tens of kilometers. In the cockpit, Green Peak turned back and said seriously, "Master, the fighter can't get any closer. If we get any closer with the detection technology of the new star, they will soon find us." Understood. You wait here, Tani, and I will go and check it out. Kale waved his hand, and Tani, who was wearing the Iron Man armor, immediately followed. The two walked out of the cockpit and were about to leave the fighter through the rear hatch. "Be careful, boss." Lorna watched their backs. The punk girl who used to be unrestrained, handsome, and fearless, at this time held her hands together and prayed secretly in her heart, no different from a weak woman waiting for her husband to return safely. Chapter 391. Kale and Tani left the space warship and entered outer space where life forms could not survive. In the harsh environment of extreme cold and zero gravity, Kale wore a special slim-fit spacesuit while Tani wore an Iron Man suit made of the same material as the space warship. Both of them were able to move freely in outer space. There was a crucial detail here. Whether it was Kale's fusion energy or the golden red paint on Tani's suit, it was too eye-catching to appear in the area patrolled by the spacecraft. Therefore, Kale didn't use his fusion energy to fly and only relied on his field to pull himself to fly at a low speed. Tani even painted his Iron Man suit grayish-black, returning to the old version of the original armor. The engine was also operating at a lower power. They were like two small fish in the sea. In the vast outer space, under the cover of countless meteorites, they slowly swam towards the gigantic prison fortress in the distance. They didn't seem to be far from the prison, but in reality, it still took Kale and Selena a lot of time to reach it. Kale placed his hand on the hard outer layer of the prison fortress and looked up. With his vision, he couldn't see the top. The fortress could no longer be described as the size of a mountain. It was more like a city in the sky that existed in a dream. However, this city in the sky was suspended above the star belt. It was filled with a mysterious, treacherous, cold, and bloody dark aura. It really is a complete interstellar prison. Tani whispered and spoke to Kale through a small communicator. "Boss, I'll get Jarvis to find the entrance." Kale nodded. To ensure Lorna's safety, he also left Vice on the space warship. If there was an emergency, he would know immediately. "Then I'll start." Tani placed his steel palm on the outer layer of the prison. Circles of translucent light waves spread out and penetrated the thick outer wall. 3 years of wandering in space, this experience is not something that can be given by Earth. Tani's development of the Iron Man armor and Krypton energy is no longer the same as before. His combat power and auxiliary abilities have greatly improved, and he has gradually kept up with the technological level of the Galaxy Alliance's technological civilization. For example, the light wave sonar was one of them. It could ignore the system defense and silently observe the internal structure of high-tech equipment. "Got it?" Tani retracted his hand and waved at Kale before flying up the wall. Kale quickly followed. Tani stopped at a protruding steel plate. It looked like a small door that could allow people to pass through. There was a card on the side, similar to the escape doors of large buildings on Earth. "Jarvis, it's up to you." Tani stretched out his arm. The steel arm deformed slightly and extended a miniature mechanical claw toward the card on the switch. After a while, the door's green light flashed and suddenly opened to the left with a click. Whoosh! The moment the door opened, due to the great contrast between the pressure inside and outside, it instantly formed an extremely fast airflow that gushed out. One of the alien prison guards, who was wearing a protective suit and holding a laser gun, was obviously patrolling the inner corridor. Unfortunately, he was wrapped in the airflow and was sent flying out. Not good. Kale was quick-witted and instinctively activated the fusion energy. Dazzling flames flickered on the surface of his body, and his already strong Protoss body was greatly strengthened. A flash of lightning could be seen. The scene that was about to go out of control a moment ago, and the next moment the escape door was closed again. Kale, Tani, and the prison guard's figures were nowhere to be seen. They captured a few approaching aircrafts and circled around the door. When there was nothing abnormal, they dispersed again according to the system's control program. At this time, inside the prison, in the outermost corridor of the escape door, Kale exhaled softly and the dazzling light on his body dimmed. He released Tani's shoulder with his left hand, and threw the unconscious alien prison guard to the ground with his right hand. Godfather, fortunately you were fast enough. Tani was still in shock. He patted his steel chest that was emitting a blue light. At that moment as a human he could not react at all. Kale had safely resolved everything by relying on the speed of light. This is just the beginning, be careful. Kale said to Tani, looked down at the unconscious prison guard and said to the symbiotic body attached to his body, don't lie down all day, it's time to work, Venom. Yes, master. Venom's lazy response sounded in his mind, and then linear mucus overflowed from Kale's shoulder. The liquid turned into sharp tentacles, lifted the prison guard's protective helmet from his neck, and fiercely pierced into the skull of the unknown alien life form. Tani was obviously used to this. He remained vigilant and scanned the cold steel corridor around him. Venom's tentacles twitched for a while, forcibly reading information in the other party's brain tissue, filtering out negative and unnecessary memory fragments, simplifying them layer by layer, and then conveying them to Kale through himself. When the tentacles were retracted into his body, the prison guard's brain was dead and he lost his vitality. Kale nodded to Tani and said, okay, I already know the architectural infrastructure of Keen Prison, the distribution of armed defenses, and the location of the criminal classification. Tani thought for a while and said, with the combat power of the two of us, if we attack together, can we forcibly break through the prisoner's cage and bring out the one called Star-Lord? Yes, but there are too many checkpoints from the periphery to the inner area. Even if we successfully find Star-Lord, the Nova Corps spaceship has already surrounded Keen Prison outside. Kale shook his head gently. Outside the prison fortress is outer space. He has never tried to fly with people at the speed of light in space. Then I'll go to the control center? Tani continued to ponder. With the assistance of Jarvis, he is good at cracking and hacking databases, and he is used to the cultural route of stealing the base. Okay. You go to the control center and I will disguise myself as a prison guard to find the target. Once I succeed, I will give you a hint. You immediately create chaos, and we will take the opportunity to escape the prison together. No problem. After the two finished discussing, they did not delay and immediately took action. Tani took off the prison guard's protective suit and put it on his steel coat, and took away the key and identity card. Without the camouflage skill, he could only use this most simple and crude method. Kale looked at the prison guard's body who had been stripped to his underwear, took off the gloves of his spacesuit, and pointed his white and slender palm at the ground. With a scorching golden flame falling, the prison guard's body evaporated into a layer of faint dust in just half a second. Then Kale's body continued to expand, growing taller and bigger, and the prison guard uniform appeared out of thin air. In the blink of an eye, he looked exactly the same as the prison guard who had been destroyed. Chapter 392. Keen High Security Prison, the lower level of the prison area where prisoners are held. Kale disguised himself as a dead alien prison guard and followed the memories he had searched, almost unimpeded all the way down, and soon arrived at the place where the faint cries of prisoners could be heard. As the most important holding place in the prison, the security has been increased several times. Cameras and alarms are installed in every corner. A large number of intelligent aircraft patrol back and forth in the aisles. There are also a lot more heavily armed alien prison guards. It is far from the unguarded and deserted outer corridor. When he came to the entrance of the prison area, Kale saw the other alien prison guards guarding the door without the slightest flinching or tension. He walked over habitually until the two alien prison guards cast their vigilant gazes over. Only then did he greet them cordially. Hi Ruda Budo. Both of you are on duty today. You are? One of the alien prison guards rolled his eyes and looked straight at Kale. I am Leo. Kale took off his protective helmet, revealing his dark blue and ugly alien face after his disguise, with a bald head and a row of white teeth in a friendly gesture to the prison guard of the same race. The space area of Keen Prison is large and there are thousands of prison guards inside. But as a prison guard who has worked here for more than 10 years, they will more or less have some intersection. Most of them are familiar with each other, which also makes it difficult for outsiders to sneak in. However, this is a good thing for Kale, who has a perfect disguise. Turned out to be you. Aren't you basically guarding outside? Why did you suddenly come to the inner prison? Ruda suddenly realized and his vigilance immediately collapsed. There is no other way. The higher-ups said that the group of guys headed by Star-Lord are related to the homicidal maniac Ronin and they need to continue to interrogate him. So, they sent me to help. Kale sighed helplessly. With the appearance and memory of a prison guard, it was really easy to disguise himself. Even the excuse could be in line with the intelligence and facts. This is really hard on you. The newcomers are not good people. They are very dangerous. You have to be careful. Go in. Budo, who was guarding the door, felt deep sympathy and kindly reminded him. He then manipulated the switch to open the steel door. I will. Kale waved his hand at them and walked in naturally. The laser automatically identified the authenticity of one's identity, but technology was also unable to see through the disguise that went deep into one's genes. In the prison area, the building space was much wider. There was a built-in spaceship in the middle, which served as the central control center of the prison area. The rows of small space capsules around it served as the resting rooms for the prisoners. Usually, prisoners would move about freely in the prison area. Kale just entered the prison area and saw alien criminals wearing yellow prison uniforms on the periphery, but before he could find Star-Lord's figure, the lights inside the area suddenly dimmed, and the alarm on the wall sounded. Woo woo woo. Kale originally thought that his identity had been exposed, but he did not expect that the countless AI flying devices would ignore him. They buzzed over his head and rushed towards the prisoners to maintain order. They turned on their weapons and issued a cold warning, "Everyone don't move. Otherwise, emergency measures will be taken." At the same time, there were many prison guards in the corridor, either holding high-voltage electric batons or rechargeable firearms, and they rushed into the prison area one after another with a ferocious face. Kale was a little confused for a while, and he grabbed prison guard Ruto, who wanted to run past him, and asked in surprise, "What happened inside?" The power supply battery in the prison area was pulled out by the prisoners, and several prisoners took the opportunity to make trouble. They should be trying to escape from prison. We must stop them quickly. Come with me. After Ruto finished speaking, he pulled Kale and together with other prison guards, they went deeper into the prison area. Prison break? What a coincidence. Kale ran while complaining in his heart. It's too much of a coincidence that the prison break and the prison break can also run into each other. In the prison area, inside the prison where the prisoners are held, a fierce battle is playing out at the moment. The most eye-catching one is a tree-like dryad, standing on two legs like a human, 3 meters tall and burly. It is located in the center of the field, and the palms of the dense dry branches on the left and right easily block the bullets of the surrounding guards. Wow. There is a small bear-like creature riding on the back of the dryad, holding the live ammunition gun taken from the prison guard, raging wildly and shooting indiscriminately in all directions. Dryad Groot and genetically modified biological rocket, these two are veterans of the Guardian of the Galaxy. Kale's eyes lit up, and he finally saw the acquaintance of the original work, and Star-Lord must not be far from here. Hurry up and kill them. A cold female voice came from above. A green-skinned woman in a yellow prison uniform leaped down. She was agile and ruthless. While she was still in the air, she used the blade in her hand to cut Ludo and 2 or 3 prison guards who had just arrived at the scene. The moment the green-skinned woman landed on the ground, a small group of prison guards fell to the ground like grass being mowed down. She held a blood-stained blade in her hand and jumped on the ground like a leopard, pouncing towards Kyle, who was disguised as a prison guard not far away. Thanos' adopted daughter? Gola? This information flashed through Kale's mind, and in the next moment, the tip of the blade was close to his throat, and he could feel the discomfort of the blade touching his skin. Although he knew that this ordinary cold weapon and the opponent's strength alone couldn't break through the super-strong protection of the outer layer of venom, his body still instinctively responded. Clang? Gola's eyes widened in surprise. She thought that she would easily cut the prison guard's throat like before, but the blade was tightly clamped by the other party's lightning-fast outstretched fingers. She pulled hard, but the blade didn't move. Gola was even more shocked, and only then did she look at the prison guard's face. It was no different from the other prison guards, the face of an ordinary blue planet passerby, but the face of the prison guard in front of her was indifferent and calm, his fingers holding the blade casually, his dark eyes narrowed slightly, looking at her as if thinking about something. Kale was indeed thinking about something very important. For him, Galora was just an insignificant person, but looking at the future of the original work, Galora was the most important person in Thanos Overlord's eyes. He was also the key role in Thanos Overlord's acquisition of the Soul Gem, the sacrifice for the Infinity Gauntlet weapon. In that case, why don't I get rid of this key person? Kale only had this thought flash through his mind for a moment, and a murderous look suddenly appeared in his eyes. His whole person and even his aura completely changed. Gola's face was extremely pale, and she didn't have the slightest thought of resisting. She suddenly let go of the hilt, turned around decisively, and ran wildly in the direction of Groot, as if she was running for her life. The prison guard's carefree, unfathomable feeling, and the feeling of seeing living creatures as ants and dust, was too similar to her adoptive father, Thanos. It was so similar that it made her soul tremble, sent chills down her spine, and goosebumps all over her body. Chapter 393. Kale pinched the tip of the sword with 2 fingers and looked at Galmola, who was fleeing in a panic. His murderous intent had only lasted for an instant. Since he had the idea, there was no need to hesitate. He put it into action in the next moment. He turned on a certain switch in his body, and dots of dazzling energy appeared between Kale's fingers. The alloy blade that he had been pinching suddenly cracked from the tip of the sword. The cracks extended and branched, quickly covering the entire body of the sword. Every crack had a faint glow. Go. Kyle spat out those words calmly. The blade then exploded, turning into countless small, sharp shards. They shone faintly as they pierced through the air, shooting like hidden weapons towards Gola's back, who had already fled 10 meters away. Galmola was still running for her life, but she suddenly felt a chill on her back. Her rich combat experience gave her a very frightening illusion. No matter if she continued to sprint forward, roll, or dodge left and right, she could not avoid the attack of the man behind her. The fragments had sealed off all her escape routes. It was as if the scimitar of the Grim Reaper was on her neck. No matter what, she had no way to resist or escape. It's over. Galmola's mind was blank. This was the last thought that flashed through her mind. She saw the genetic creature, Rocket, in front of her, waving at her. Then she felt something tighten around her waist, and her body was suddenly pulled toward Rocket. Then dense and thick branches opened into an umbrella shape, quickly covering their fragile bodies completely. Chi. The alloy fragments were like enhanced versions of Gatling bullets, piercing the tall, wide and tough body of the tree into a sieve. Some of the wounds could be seen directly from the front. They were nailed into the steel inner wall without slowing down. He actually saved them. Should I say that he is indeed the strongest support in the future Guardian of the Galaxy? Kale whispered, slightly surprised. He looked at the tree man, Groot, who had become riddled with holes while protecting Galmola and Rocket. Groot slowly raised his withered arm, revealing Gola and Rocket in his arms. Rocket was holding a gun, swallowing his saliva frantically as he looked at Kale, who was more than 10 meters away. My God, what was that just now? This is the first time I've seen Groot suffer such a serious injury. Groot. Groot muttered the words that sounded similar to his name, comforting Rocket and telling him that he was fine. The many fatal wounds on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. So close, so close. Galmola was still in a state of shock. He patted his heaving chest and said to Rocket, "You must be careful. That prison guard is different from ordinary prison guards. He is very strong, so strong that it makes one's hair stand on end." "You don't have to tell me, I know." "Groot, let's do it together," Rocket quickly said. He raised his gun with both hands and aimed at Kale and fired fiercely. Kale didn't make any movements, but the disguise of a prison guard transformed into a blurry light and shadow. Black liquid gushed out and expanded, covering the surface of his body and shaping it into a slim-fit dark combat suit. Ding ding dang dang. The alloy bullets that fell on Kale's body all bounced back, making a series of crisp sounds as they fell to the ground. Kale stepped forward, but his limbs were bound by the oncoming tree vines. It was the masterpiece of the tree man, Groot. His hands were forked into 4 tough tree vines. In addition to his superhuman strength, his binding ability was far stronger than high-tech iron chains. Rocket saw that firearms were ineffective against Kale and showed an incredulous expression. After Kale's limbs were bound by the tree vines, he sighed softly and said, "Give up. No creature can break free from Groot's binding." "Is that so?" Kale smiled faintly. He didn't use the fire god's divine power or fusion energy. He only used the strength of his muscles. His feet that were firmly bound by the tree vines lifted up with difficulty. As the vines tightened, he took a step forward calmly. The first step. Soon the second step, the third step. Kale ignored the binding of the tree vines and walked more naturally toward Galmola. "Don't be lazy, put in more effort, Groot." Rocket was sweating profusely as he patted his old friend's head. It wasn't until Galmola gestured to the ground that Rocket was shocked to find that Groot's feet were deeply embedded in the ground. The dense tree roots even tore through the steel. Groot had obviously used all his strength, but he still couldn't stop the man in front of him. Damn it. Galmola, his target is you. Hurry up and run. Rocket saw Kale getting closer and closer and couldn't help but anxiously say to Galmola, "What about you?" Galmola clenched his fists. "Do you think I want to? We've only known each other for less than 2 days, and now I'm selling my life for you. But right now Groot can't escape. I can only stay." Rocket clenched his teeth and began to reload his gun. "Then I'll stay too. If it wasn't for you guys, I would have been dead long ago." Galmola took a deep breath and flung his dark red hair. "This time we're really wiped out." Rocket laughed bitterly. Rocket and the others were about to fight to the death when they saw Kale approaching within 5 meters. A bald, brown-skinned man with a bare upper body covered in tattoos rushed forward from behind Kale. He used his strong hands to firmly hold Kale's arms. "Dirks the Destroyer?" Rocket shouted in surprise. Galmola was incomparably flabbergasted. A few days ago, this destroyer still hated Luo Nan and wanted to kill him to pay for his wife and child. He didn't expect that he would stand on their side at this time. "Don't think too much. I'm not trying to help you. It's just that if you die, there will be fewer people who will dare to go against Luo Nan." Dirks growled and exerted all his strength. The veins on his forehead bulged as he pulled Kale back with all his might. Groot the Treant and Dirks the Destroyer. Both of them exerted their strength one after the other, finally causing Kale's movements to stagnate. "Is everyone here?" Kale's face was calm. Looking at it this way, almost all the members of the future Guardian of the Galaxy were here. Only Star-Lord was missing. In this case, should he erase Galmola, or should everything end here? Kale was thinking when Dirks, who was panting heavily on his back, suddenly provoked, "How is it? Out of strength, right? Get." The hall suddenly fell silent. Rocket and Galmola looked at each other, their eyes wide open. They wanted to curse in their hearts. Why did you provoke him? Just now they realized that Kale's killing intent was very pure, but not strong. It was like a thought. He wanted to do it now, but maybe he would give up in the next second. And now, then let me show you my true strength. The corner of Kale's mouth rose, his dark pupils turned to shredded gold, and a layer of faint golden flames burned on his body. The moment the golden flames appeared, the temperature of the prison area soared. Groot and Dirks let out extremely tragic wails one after another. Chapter 394. At the bottom of Chine Prison in the prison area. The destroyer, Drax, who was known for his thick skin and powerful strength, had completely let go of Kyle's arms and back. He curled up and twitched as he fell to the ground, his mouth constantly making sounds of cold air being sucked in. His strong bare chest was scorched black, as if it had been grilled on a fire for a while, emitting a faint smell of meat. On the other side, the Ent Groot kept retreating, wailing Groot in his mouth. The vines that had turned into arms also let go of Kale, and they were covered with burning golden flames. Despite swinging hard in the air or whipping on the steel floor, the flames on the vines showed no signs of extinguishing. Instead, they became more and more vigorous and extended to the Ent's body. "Groot, pull yourself together, Groot." Rocket was on Groot's shoulder, shaking violently with the Ent's body. He looked anxiously at Gola beside him. "Hurry up and find a way to save him." "You don't have to tell me, I know." Gola took a deep breath and suddenly jumped forward from Groot's shoulder. He pulled out a brand new blade from his back and slashed at the center of the fire tree vines. 4 parts of the burning vines were cut off and fell to the ground. They were quickly covered by golden flames and quickly burned into a layer of black ashes. Groot retreated to the corner of the wall, his remaining vine arms emitting green smoke. He looked at Kale, who had returned to his original human form, with great fear. At this time, Kale was wearing a dark venom suit, his whole body was surrounded by faint golden flames, his silver hair had turned into wisps of burning flames, and his whole body was filled with palpitating divine power. In these 3 years of wandering in the universe, Venom naturally did not gain any fire resistance, but Kale's control of the divine power of fire was more delicate, and he could output the flames of the divine power through the suit. Of course, if the divine power was fully unleashed, Kale would completely turn into a flaming man, and even the blood in his body would boil at high temperature, and Venom would still not be able to symbiotically attach to his body. However, the flame itself restrained the Ent, and the destroyer was more resistant to physical attacks. Both of them had no means of defense or resistance against the divine flames of thousands of degrees Celsius, so there was no need to fully unleash their divine power. Gola. Kyle stared at Gregora as he approached him step by step with the divine flame in tow. Galmola's face was pale. He bit his lips and gripped the blade in his hand tightly. Under the scorching heat, sweat kept dripping down from his chin. His eyes were fixed on Kyle and he did not move at all. There was also no need to escape. The huge disparity in strength made escaping a luxury. Gola, run. Rocket stood on top of Groot's head and pulled the trigger. The gun roared and fired a series of bullets at Kale. But this time there wasn't even a chance for the bullet to bounce back. As soon as the bullet reached the flames surrounding Kale's body, it sizzled and immediately melted into red molten iron. You can't die right now. If you want to die, then you have to die by my hands. Luonan's lackey. Dirk spoke. He was a dignified and rough man, but he had a bit of a tsundere tone to him. He covered the burn wound on his chest with one hand, and he used the other to support himself on the floor as he struggled to get up with great difficulty. You don't need to say any more. Gregora smiled in relief. He simply threw away the blade in his hand as he faced Kale, who was walking in front of him. He said slowly in a resigned tone, "You came for me, right? I can give you my life, but please let the others go." Kale rubbed his chin as if he was really considering this proposal. The golden flames on his body flickered and dimmed a bit. Gregora. Rocket, Groot and Dirks couldn't help but show sorrow on their faces. No, we can't let them go. Another team of armed prison guards arrived at the tunnel behind them. The leader of the prison guards spoke urgently after hearing the conversation. You don't have the right to speak. Kale frowned slightly. He waved his hand behind him, and the torrential flames surged out like a wave, engulfing the prison guards behind him along with their guns. Hearing the miserable wails of the prison guards before they died, Gregora and the others all changed their expressions. They really couldn't figure out the origin and intentions of the mysterious man before them. Fine, I promise you. You die and the others leave. Kale nodded. Gregora closed his eyes gently as if relieved of a burden. His tragic past flashed through his mind, and the shouts of Rocket and the others beside him could no longer be heard clearly. Don't worry, I will do it quickly, and you will die without the slightest pain. Kale stretched out 2 fingers and formed a sword shape. Golden flames appeared on his fingertips and he pointed them at Gregora's defenseless forehead. Before his fingertips had completely fallen, there were already burn marks on Gregora's eyebrows. Seeing that Kale's fingers were about to penetrate Gregora's forehead, at the critical moment, a calm male voice hurriedly sounded, "Stop." Kale's fingers hovered between his eyebrows, and the flames were extinguished. Dark green blood streaked down Gregora's calm face. Everyone looked up and saw a human man in his early 30s. He was wearing clothes and armor made of various technological products. He carried a bulging backpack and held a metal robot prosthesis in his hand. He was panting as he stood in the corridor on the 2nd floor of the prison. Star-Lord Quill, this time the Guardian of the Galaxy is really full. Kale looked at the newcomer and thought secretly in his heart. Quill, where have you been for so long? Rocket screamed in surprise. I took the prosthesis you wanted and my backpack equipment. After Quill finished speaking to Rocket, he jumped down from the 2nd floor and said solemnly to Kale, "Everything can be discussed. Who are you and why do you have to kill Gregora?" "I don't need a reason to kill. If you really want a reason, I can only say that her fate is bad and she is related to that person in the Titan sector," Kale said lightly. "In addition, my name is Kale and I am from Earth." "Titan? You know Thanos?" Gregora's eyes widened in surprise. Quill's reaction was even more exaggerated. He blinked, looked up and down at Kale and said excitedly, "I am also from Earth, fellow countrymen." "Wait, the name Kale, why does it seem like I have seen it somewhere before?" Kale. Quill muttered a few words, his body trembled and he blurted out, "Symbol of peace, Major General Kale." "No way, is it really the king?" "Quill, do you know him?" Rocket and others were a little confused, this reversal was too exciting. "Of course I know him. No, it should be said that everyone on Earth knows him, he is a legendary hero of our world." Quill was excited. He was taken away from Earth by the interstellar hunter Yondu when he was a child in the 1980s. Of course, he was familiar with Kale, who made a name for himself as a hero in World War II. "You are all humans, why are you so different?" Rocket was speechless and the others deeply agreed. After all, Kale's combat power made them feel powerless and fearful. Chapter 395. Despite the interlude of Star-Lord's appearance, the tense atmosphere in the prison did not ease much. Mr. Kale. Star-Lord Quill looked at Galmola, then looked at Kale and asked in a deep voice, "Do you have to kill Galmola? You are definitely not from Ronan's side. You said it was because of someone in the Titan Galaxy. Is it for revenge or the bounty or something else?" Kale was silent. "Explain? How can this be explained clearly? Could it be that he came from another world and knew that after Thanos made the Infinity Gloves in the future, he would collect 6 Infinity Stones, and Galmola was the only sacrifice for Thanos to get the Soul Gem, the most important thing to sacrifice? Once Thanos collected 6 Infinity Stones, the Infinity Gloves would destroy more than half of the lives in the entire 9-world universe with a snap of his fingers." Galmola smiled sadly and said, "The Titan Galaxy. It's the place where I grew up as a child, and it's also the place where I endured humiliation and torture. The man he was talking about should be my adoptive father, Thanos." Thanos? Everyone was stunned. This name seemed to have a suffocating magic and a sense of oppression. "Yes." Kale nodded, looked at Galmola and said, "Galmola, I know that you have information about the location of something, and that is the secret that you want to hide from Thanos even if you die. Once that thing is obtained by Thanos, this universe will fall into a cruel catastrophe." Galmola looked at Kale in disbelief as if struck by lightning. "How do you know about that?" Kale said faintly, "Not only that, I also know Thanos' purpose. Now you understand. Your existence will indirectly help Thanos. So, it's better to let you leave this world forever." Galmola's face was pale, he bowed his head and said nothing, but he was convinced to nod. "Yes, you are right. If my sacrifice can succeed in stopping that man's actions, then everything will be worth it." From the appearance of Titan Thanos' name to Galmola's willingness to die, Rocket and others were confused. They always felt that what Kale and Galmola were thinking was far more complicated and serious than they imagined. "I understand." Quill crossed his arms over his chest, and his face was full of confidence, which made Drax the Destroyer, who was still lying on the ground, laugh out loud. "What can you understand? Listen to me." Quill snorted softly and said to Gola, "You know the whereabouts of something. That thing must not be discovered by your foster father, or the consequences will be dire. Right?" Galmola nodded. Quill turned sideways and said to Kyle, "Mr. Kyle, you don't want Thanos to get that thing, so you want to kill Gola who knows the secret. Right?" "More or less." Kyle shrugged. "Then it's fine." Quill put his palms together and suggested, "As long as Galmola leads the way, we will retrieve the item and then hand it over to Mr. Kale for safekeeping. Isn't that fine?" "Mr. Kale, we have all seen your strength. Are you weaker than that so-called Thanos? Are you afraid that he will snatch the item?" Galmola was stunned. She had never thought of getting the gem herself, because even if she got it, she would only find a place to continue hiding it and not let her foster father, Thanos, get it. Kale was also slightly stunned, and his mind suddenly became clear. He felt that he had been a little stubborn before. Perhaps it was because he had just transmigrated after watching Avengers 3, but Kale had always been afraid of Thanos' existence and that Armageddon snap, so he had never considered collecting the gem himself. Now that Quill reminded him, Kale suddenly changed his mind. First of all, Thanos was not invincible. Before Thanos was made into the Infinity Glove, he was just an ordinary high-dimensional life form. Without the support of the 6 gems and the universe's mysteries, his combat power was not much stronger than a Protoss. But now, Kale had the Protoss Fire-type divine power, the adult venom, the artificial intelligence vice, and the fusion energy to control light energy, etc. The talents cultivated were not inferior to the Titan forces. Why not collect the 6 gems in advance, stand at the peak and wait for Thanos to deliver his head? Instead of waiting for death, it's better to take the initiative to attack. Kale muttered to himself. His gold-shredded pupils became brighter and brighter, as if they had reignited his fighting spirit. Galmola looked around at everyone and said coldly, "If we search for that item, we will completely stand on the opposite side of Thanos. Let me remind you, even Ronan wants to curry favor with Thanos. Are you mentally prepared to fight against that man?" Rocket and the others looked at each other. Before they could speak, Kale chuckled and said, "You've already got one of them. There's no turning back." "What do you mean?" Everyone's faces changed. Galmola stared at Kale, waiting for his answer. "Cool. Do you still have the universal orb with you?" Kale reached out to Quill for it. "Of course, I got it with great difficulty. Ronan's subordinates and Galmola all want to fight for it. If it wasn't for it, I wouldn't have come to this damned place." Galmola said that this item is very valuable. Quill said as he reached into his backpack. After rummaging around, he threw a golf-sized embroidered silver orb to Kale. "Be careful." Kale caught the universal orb solemnly. He pressed a few fingers on the outer shell and felt the indestructible hardness. He held his breath and mobilized the fusion energy to cover his palm. Dazzling light circulated. His fingers suddenly exerted force and crushed the universal orb in front of everyone. Wow. 5 billion. Quill, Rocket, and Galmola, who were short on money, couldn't help but feel pain in their hearts when they saw this scene. But soon they were speechless. After the universal orb shattered, there was a crystal core inside. It was sparkling and translucent like a gem. Kale grasped it in his left hand, and it constantly radiated rings of purple light. An extremely destructive and terrifying aura filled the entire prison. Kale's expression was calm as he held the purple gem firmly in his hand. The fusion energy was surprisingly effective. It suppressed the aura and dazzling radiance leaking from the gem. Galmola stared blankly at Kale's left hand. He whispered to himself, "So that's how it is." No wonder Thanos wanted Ronan to give the universal orb to him. "What the hell is that thing?" Quill asked the question that Rocket and the others were puzzled about. "It's the thing that Galmola is desperately trying to hide. But there are a total of 6 similar items in the entire universe. As for the rest, I'll tell you all slowly when we get out of the prison." Kale held the purple gem in his hand and spoke to his electronic watch. "Vice, notify Tani. We're preparing to break out of the prison." "Yes, Master." Vice immediately sent out a radio wave after receiving the order. He got in touch with Jarvis on Tani's body in the upper levels of the prison. Kale walked away from Galmola and turned to speak to Quill. "Take your people and follow me. I'll take you all out of here first. It won't be too late to explain things after we find a safe place." "Listen to him." Quill gave everyone a look. Rocket sighed and patted Groot's shoulder. Groot understood and took a few steps forward. He carried the burned dirks on his back. Everyone followed Kale and broke out of the prison's outer layer where the interstellar spaceship was parked. Chapter 396. Emergency Alert, Emergency Alert. Several criminals are escaping from prison. Prison guards, please go to prison area B immediately to stop them. You can use any armed force and emergency means. Emergency alert, the prison control system has been invaded. Prison guards, please go to the high-level central area A immediately for reinforcements. The interior of Keene Prison was in a mess. The prison guards were busy running around like ants in a pot, running back and forth between the upper and lower floors. They couldn't figure out the enemy's movements and traces at all. As a last resort, the prison guards contacted the Nova Corps for help. This is Keene High Security Prison. There is an emergency that requires the Nova Corps to come and reinforce. Please reply immediately after hearing this. At this time, an orange-blue space fighter, flashing with a gray-silver luster, ignited from the prison parking area and accelerated away from Keene Prison, fleeing along the asteroid belt outside. Thor took off his steel mask, looked at Quill and the others sitting in their seats, and asked in surprise, "Godfather, why did you bring so many people? Didn't you come to find Star-Lord alone?" "It's a long story," Kale said softly, and the dazzling light on his left arm suddenly dimmed. When he opened his palm again, the purple gem that was originally in his palm completely disappeared. At the same time, an item card entered the card space and climbed to the top at the fastest speed, glowing with a circle of dazzling crystal light. Power Gem, Infinity Gem that masters the profound meaning of power. Rare colorless item card. This gem has infinite profound meaning of power. It can infinitely enhance the user's physique and strength, instantly copy all physical attributes of superpowers, and make the user's own physical attack ability and defense ability close to an invincible state. It can absorb and release the enemy's energy attack, release a huge purple energy shock wave, completely destroy the space fighter spaceship, and even blow asteroids into pieces. Warning: the user needs extremely powerful strength to control it, otherwise the user will be lost in the powerful force. Current status: can be summoned as a physical entity. Power Gem: this is the second Infinity Gem that Kale got after coming into contact with the Space Gem. The practicality and strength of this gem, to a certain extent, absolutely crushed the Space Gem. Of course, it requires the user's physique, which should be much higher. Even though Kale had Protoss genes and fused energy, he was not so arrogant as to try to control the power gem with his body alone. After all, even someone as strong as Thanos had created the Infinity Glove that was specifically designed to control the Infinity Stones. Only then did he launch the crazy operation of plundering the Infinity Stones in the universe. Maybe I should create an equipment item similar to the Infinity Glove that can control the Infinity Stone. Kale thought in his heart and quickly threw it to the back of his mind and returned to the present reality. He briefly explained the origin and use of the Infinity Stone to everyone. With the Infinity Glove, once the 6 gems are gathered, more than half of the lives in the universe will be reduced to ashes with a snap of the fingers. When Kale said this, other than Gola, everyone's expression changed. I don't think anyone would do something as crazy as destroying more than half of their lives, right? Quill pretended to be relaxed as he comforted her. Yeah. Rocket nodded in agreement. No, you're wrong. Gola's expression was very ugly as he said bitterly, "This is what my adoptive father, Thanos, is pursuing. 10 years ago, I knew that he was looking for the dwarfs. He was thinking of ways to create the Infinity Glove, and he was cultivating his power to find the whereabouts of the Infinity Stone in the universe." This is too crazy. Everyone was silent as they digested this shocking information. Gola seemed to remind Luonan. He continued, "Since the power gem is the universal spirit sphere, then Thanos Dominator will not let off anyone related to it. Plus, Luonan is infatuated with the legend and power of the gem." Luonan humphed. "He came to find me. I couldn't ask for more." Dirks, who was lying on the chair, clenched his fists and spoke coldly. "In for a penny, in for a pound. Let's just take the other gem and see how Thanos will gather the 6 gems. After all, we have Mr. Kale, a superpower." Quill patted Kale's shoulder in a familiar manner. He was just short of taking out his notebook and asking for an autograph. "I don't dare to say that I can beat Thanos, but I don't put Luonan in my eyes." Kale's calm words inexplicably made people feel a sense of security. "Hey mister, you've been looking at me since just now." Quill suddenly screamed and pointed to Tani, who was still wearing the Iron Man armor. Everyone else looked at Tani. Indeed, Tani was still staring at Quill closely, and his eyes never left him, with urgency and expectation in his eyes. "To be honest, although I have slept with women of many races, I don't like men." Quill spread out his hands and shrank back his neck. "You are Star-Lord. I only like beautiful ordinary human women, bastard," Tani said angrily. Kale smiled and said bluntly, "Quill, to tell you the truth, we came to Keen Prison for you alone." "For me? What?" Quill asked in confusion. Tani took a few steps forward and raised his left steel arm, which suddenly emitted light and presented Howard's photos and files on a holographic projection. "I want to find his whereabouts. The intermediary said that you had seen him on a certain planet a few years ago. Howard Stark." Quill stared at the projection, touched his chin, thought for a moment and quickly remembered and said, "I have an impression of him. By the way, in the slums of Nank, there is an old human man named Howard. He is very famous in the local area as a repair master. I used to repair technological equipment there." "That's right." Tani and Kale looked at each other, and both of their faces showed excitement. "Then have you seen these two before?" Kale gestured to Tani, and Tani knowingly released the photos and files of Lucy and Logan, but this time Quill looked at it for a long time and finally shook his head and said, "I haven't seen them, such beautiful human women. If I had seen them, I would never forget them." Kale frowned, which means that Howard and Lucy were separated, or Lucy and the others had an accident. "I hope they are okay, otherwise." Kale's eyes were sharp and cold, murderous intent rose from his body, and Quill and the others took a few steps back in fear. "Godfather, they must be okay." Tani put his hand on Kale's shoulder and said, "I hope so." Kale restrained his emotions and said to Quill, "Now, take us to Nank and find Howard." Before he finished speaking, the fighter he was in trembled violently, and Jarvis on Tani's body gave a warning, "There are fighter jets from the New Star Corps chasing after us from behind. Then let's meet up with Lorna's Eagle first." Kale decisively gave the order. Jarvis said, "Vice just contacted me. They are being chased by a large number of unknown spaceships, and the initial judgment is that they are Luonan's subordinates." Everyone's faces turned pale when they heard this. They were really surrounded by wolves in front and tigers behind. There was no way to escape. Chapter 397. On the space warship belonging to Star-Lord. "Godfather, what should we do now? Do we meet the attack or continue to escape?" Tani's face was solemn as he handed the choice to Kale. Quill and the others also focused their attention on Kale. They naturally knew how strong this man was, but what they were facing now was the two strongest forces in the Milky Way Alliance, the New Star Corps and Ronan's fleet. Kale was silent. "Escape? Even if he could escape by himself, there were too many people on the two space warships. He couldn't leave the warships and take them all away. Meet the attack? This was a battle of trapped beasts. In the end, everyone on the two space warships except him might die. It was impossible to take such a big risk. Oh right. Kale seemed to have thought of an idea and ordered Tani, let Jarvis change the warship's route. We'll return to the prison and inform the vice warships to follow our warship. We just escaped and now we're going back? Everyone was a little confused when they heard this. Quill, I need you to do me a favor. Kale narrowed his eyes. Mr. Kale, please tell us. Quill nodded. In the current situation, everyone was sitting on the same boat, so there was no distinction between them. Kale pondered and said, help me think of a way. Contact the New Star Corps or the higher-ups of New Star Corps. Tell them that the person who broke the prison was the human criminal from Freedom Square yesterday. Now there's a deal that they can't refuse. This. Quill was a little bitter. Brown Bear Rocket beside him had his hands on his hips and glanced at him in disdain. He said, leave this to me, I'm confident. Under Kale's command, the two space warships that were pincered suddenly changed their direction and flew towards Keen Prison one after another. At the same time, the New Star Corps and Ronan's fleet received the corresponding feedback. Sir, the warship that the criminal broke out of prison has turned back. There's another space warship following behind it. They're flying towards our warship and they've sent a contact request. All New Star Corps, stop and be on high alert. Let's see what these criminals want to do. This was the online channel of the New Star Corps spaceship. After the New Star Corps officer gave the order, thousands of shining golden warships hovered above the star belt, waiting for the two space warships to enter the Tiger's Den. At the other side. Sir, the target space warship is approaching Keen Prison. If we continue forward, it will be the New Star Corps space jurisdiction area. Do we continue to pursue? Stay where you are for now. Don't move forward blindly without thinking. I'll report this to Luonan and ask for his decision. This was the online channel of Luonan's battleship. It was a pitch-black battleship of the same scale. It floated in the lonely outer space, looking at Keen Prison several thousand kilometers away across the star belt. The relationship between the New Star Legion and Luonan's forces had long been like an abyss of fire in the dark. It was just that today was the first time the two sides confronted each other across space. If it wasn't handled properly, it would be the start of a huge interstellar war. Every intelligent creature knew the pros and cons involved. The two space warships approached the New Star Legion spaceship and floated above the star belt. The cabins began to connect as one. Inside the space warship, Lorna, Green Peak, and the others had just arrived at the cockpit of Kale's space warship when they saw a genetic life form that was similar to Bibo but completely different. He picked up the communicator and spoke to Kale. Success. The New Star's higher-ups are willing to have a video chat with you. Kale knew that the New Star most likely wouldn't refuse. He had already sat down in his seat and nodded at Rocket. Turn on the video chat. Rocket operated the button and aimed the camera at Kale. A projection screen then turned on. In the center of the screen was a white-haired female New Star with a dignified appearance. Behind her stood a few uniformed men who were clearly New Star officers. Let me introduce myself. I'm the New Star's representative, the Prime Minister. The female New Star spoke with a smile on her face. My name is Kale. I'm from Earth. Kale had just finished speaking when the New Star Prime Minister looked at him in astonishment. She said in disbelief and doubt, Earth, a human? It wasn't just the New Star's understanding. In the entire Milky Way Alliance's civilization, Earth was a remote and backward civilization. Humans were even more uncivilized aboriginals. Is this what you want to see? Kale smiled faintly. He snapped his fingers and the fused energy glowed. It was like a dazzling stream of light flashing between his fingers. The New Star Prime Minister's face had a bit more respect. He smiled and said, I believe that there must be some misunderstanding between Mr. Kale and our New Star. What do you mean by cooperation? There's no harm in saying it now. Smart. Kale smiled and went straight to the point. I know that your planet is hostile to Luonan. Unfortunately, so are we. So the cooperation I'm referring to is me going to deal with Luonan. The New Star Prime Minister's body trembled. He didn't say anything, but the New Star officers behind him had already revealed shocked expressions. In the Milky Way Alliance, not many people dared to provoke Luonan, let alone deal with him alone. But the man in front of them had destroyed the New Star Corps' fighter jets not long ago. Perhaps there really was such a possibility. The New Star Prime Minister looked straight at Kale and said in a deep voice, This deal is too big. What does our new star need to pay? It's very simple. Kale raised his left hand and waved it at Quill and the others. I have a few friends who are registered criminals in Keen Prison. I hope that you can eliminate their criminal records and protect them as important VIPs. I'll take care of the rest myself. That's it? The new star Prime Minister was deeply surprised. Kale nodded lightly. He had long determined that the people on his side didn't have too deep of a conflict with New Star. A simple arrest warrant could completely resolve the issue. The New Star Prime Minister nodded and said, "No problem, I promise you. Before you return, your friends are VIPs of New Star. They'll stay with me and receive the protection of the entire New Star Corps. Then I'll leave it to you. I hope that they'll all be unharmed before I return. Otherwise, New Star will suffer my wrath." Kale finished speaking calmly and directly hung up the video call. Not long after, the New Star Corps' fighter jets that were on alert took the initiative to contact Kale's space warship. The attitude of the New Star officer changed 180 degrees. He respectfully invited the two space warships to New Star Capital as guests. "Tani, take good care of Lorna. Quill, look after your team. Just relax and wait for me to return." After Kale finished giving instructions, he brought Vice to the safety door of the rear cabin of the space warship. "Boss, you must be careful," Lorna said worriedly. "Don't worry. I never do things that I'm not confident in." Kale finished speaking confidently. He closed the door and opened the rear cabin door. His body was exposed to the violent winds and cold of outer space. Kale subconsciously circulated his fused energy. Rays of extremely dazzling and scorching light immediately lingered around his body. "I'm leaving." Kale's body was enveloped in fused energy. His entire body turned into a stream of light, smashing apart the asteroids along the way. He was like a meteor leaving the space warship and shooting towards Ronan's warship in the distance. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.